Chapter 535. She looked at Lu Feng's tearful face and listened to the words that had kept her going until now. A trace of sadness and pity flashed across her eyes. However, a moment later, her expression changed. A trace of anger appeared on her face. In a trance, she once again put her hands on her waist like she did when she was a child. She looked at Lu Feng and said proudly, Look, you're still a man. I'm not crying, but you're already crying. I'm not crying, but you're crying. I'm not crying. But am I really not crying? In the end, she still couldn't stop the surging tears. The moment she said those words, her prideful appearance completely crumbled. She looked at Lu Feng. Her eyes were extremely red. Countless tears poured down. Her appearance made his heart shatter. It made his breath stop. In the next moment, he finally stopped. In the next moment, he finally took a step forward. He took the step that was many years too late. In an instant, he appeared by her side. As if using all the strength in his life, he hugged her deeply in his arms. I'm sorry. Lu Feng wanted to say something, but at this moment he realized that the only thing he could say was sorry. She was slightly stunned. She felt a warm embrace. In the end, she no longer had the pride and aloofness of the past, because there was no need for that anymore. Because she finally waited. Why did you only come now? Lu Feng wanted to answer, but he realized that he really couldn't. Why did you only come now? He really wanted to come earlier, but he couldn't come earlier. The reason for that was because he had forgotten that all he could do was to hold her tightly in his embrace and allow her tears to wet his clothes. At this moment, although he was sad and heartbroken, he felt that happiness was so close. He had really grasped happiness. The scenes of the past kept replaying. He remembered every word she had said so clearly. He couldn't forget everything she did for him. His heart was trembling, endlessly trembling. Finally, he slowly let go of her. She looked at him, and he looked back at her quietly. A long time had passed without anyone noticing. In the end, they looked at each other in silence. Finally, she smiled. You've really grown up. The little brother of the past has grown into an adult. Little brother, in the past, he was indeed younger than her, so she always liked to call him little brother. Until one day, when he got angry because of her calling him that, she finally stopped calling him that. Now, when he heard this familiar form of address again, he didn't get angry. His heart only trembled. The words I said in the past, I am fulfilling them. I'm here, slowly realizing it. Although I failed to keep my promise, I still managed to find you in the end. I am slowly realizing all the promises I made in the past. She looked at him mischievously. Although her face was still pale, it was still the same color. However, she seemed to have regained her previous expression. She seemed to have returned to the time when she was with him, when they were carefree. Oh, how did you realize it? You even failed to keep your most important promise. In his heart, she was the most important promise, because she knew that the promise he made back then was the first promise he made in front of everyone. That was the first promise he made. It was also a promise he made for her. He felt a little awkward. After all, what she said was true. At this moment, he recalled everything he saw in the sacred monument. The awkwardness in his eyes disappeared and was replaced by a kind of pain that came from the deepest part of his heart. I'm the one who's late. I've made you suffer so much pain, right? He apologized again. But this time, before he could say anything, a small hand pressed down on his mouth. She reached out and pressed her hand against his mouth, because she really didn't want to hear him say those words again. Your appearance is already the greatest blessing I've ever received. This is enough. The moment you appeared, it was destined that you were good enough. She knew her identity and value. She knew what he had to pay if he wanted to enter this place. Back then, he wasn't treated well in the Lu family. She saw with her own eyes how he had suffered back then. She knew that it hadn't been easy for him all these years. Really, it hadn't been easy. Lu Feng smiled. He looked at the small hand covering his mouth and nodded gently. From now on, I won't say sorry anymore. I don't want you to suffer anymore, she smiled. Her beautiful face was unparalleled in her generation. Although her face was still pale, she was so beautiful at this moment. so beautiful that it could make one's heart drunk and break. I once said that I wanted to become a powerhouse, a true powerhouse. I wanted everyone to know that I, Lu Feng, am a great powerhouse. I did it. Now I've done it. The taboo monarch. This was an existence that made the universe's divine king look askance. This was the highest title among all the titles in the world. Lu Feng was someone that all the living beings in the universe had to look up to. They had to be pious. He was an emperor. He was a true, unparalleled emperor. She smiled softly and nodded. I know that you are definitely a genius. It's just that no one has discovered it yet. I have always believed in this. I have always believed in this. Lu Feng smiled and nodded gently as well. Back when he had failed to awaken his bloodline, everyone had viewed him that way. Everyone had been disappointed in him. Even his parents had been thoroughly disappointed. However, only she had never left him. She had always believed in his existence. Her constant encouragement, her unwavering loyalty, and her eternal companionship had allowed Lu Feng to achieve everything he had today. Therefore, he had always believed in what she had said. He had always believed in her. I have said that I will surpass the human monarch in the future. Believe me, this day might still be very far away, but I will succeed. I hope that on that day, you will accompany me and watch me. I will reign supreme in the universe. Do you agree? Do you agree? Although the content of Lu Feng's question was an inquiry, however, his tone was domineering. She smiled when she felt his domineering tone. At this moment, she felt as though she had returned to the past. Lu Feng had also used the same domineering tone to tell her to believe that he would surpass everything and surpass the human monarch progenitor. She smiled and nodded. Then, let's leave. The Yu clan should not stay any longer. I have already made them pay the price for all the harm they have caused you. If you are not satisfied, I will come here again in the future and take everything back for you. She shook her head gently. To her, being able to see him again was enough. She didn't want to ask for more. After all, this was her family. She really didn't want to see that day come. If it's possible, I just want to leave this place. I want to leave this place forever. I really do not want anything else to happen. I do not want to see or know. She was really sad about the bloodline of the Yu clan. Here, she was just a tool. A complete tool. A trace of sadness flowed out from her eyes. It made his heart twitch. Later, I found out that I am not the daughter of the Yu clan's young miss. My father and mother were from the side branch of the Yu clan. They were guarding the battlefield in the outer realm. They fell in a clash with the foreign races again. As for me, I was raised by an existence from the main branch because of my talent. When she was young, she didn't understand these things. It wasn't until the day she became a tool, until the day she cried her heart out in front of her parents, that she finally understood everything, the truth. Then, do you hate them? You clearly knew that the Lu Feng was talking about were her father and mother. They were the two direct descendants of the Yu family who took care of her. She remained silent. After a complicated expression flashed past her face, she finally sighed. But at this moment, there was a look of relief on her face. Hate? Maybe I don't hate them anymore. They didn't do anything wrong. The fact that they raised me already made me indebted to them. If it wasn't for them, I would have died long ago. Or maybe they're doing this because they've taken a fancy to my bloodline. But they raised me and saved me. This is an indisputable fact. I have no right to hate them. Lu Feng was silent for a moment. After a moment, he sighed deeply. His expression was exactly the same as Feather Yu's. Once again, it was as if he had let go of everything. Since it's like this, from today onwards, Yu Qingran, have nothing to do with this place or the bloodline of the Yu clan. You are just Yu Qingran, a simple girl called Yu Qingran. When the two left, half a day had already passed. Side by side, they walked quietly in the main hall. Lu Feng had already displayed the unsurpassed mysteries. Although they were moving slowly, their speed was no less than that of a peak-perfect stage martial artist flying at full speed. In a few minutes, the two returned to the main hall. Looking at the magnificent main hall, Yu Qingran's eyes flashed with a trace of sadness. I remember that the last time I saw this great hall was 12 years ago, Lu Feng's footsteps paused. 12 years ago. 12 years ago, after her body was cured by the great ancestor, she returned to this place and entered that room to become a tool. In a blink of an eye, 12 years have passed. Lu Feng really didn't know how she endured these painful 12 years. He looked at the people in the main hall. Unknowingly, Yeo Qingran had already tightly leaned against Lu Feng's body. Lu Feng could clearly feel that when she faced the Yeo clan's ancestors in the main hall, her body slightly swayed. That kind of trembling seemed to come from her soul. Lu Feng reached out his arm and hugged her tightly. At this moment, Lu Feng's eyes were so cold that it made people fearful. Chapter 536. One step after another. Lu Feng's appearance caused all eyes to be fixed on him. The Lu family's grand ancestor smiled. The Lu family's second ancestor, third ancestor, and fourth ancestor smiled as well. They were all genuinely happy for Lu Feng. However, other than them, the other ancestors of the Yeo clan were also injured, and there was a hint of anger in their eyes. In their eyes, the Lu clan was acting like a robber, trying to take away all the treasures of their Yeo clan. Unfortunately, there was nothing they could do. Some of the grand ancestors who knew everything knew that the Yeo family had lost. Whether it was in terms of morality or strength, the Yeo family had no advantage. As for the other patriarchs, although Feather Yu and Lin Huang did not say anything, they could only hide their anger when they saw that the other patriarchs around them did not say anything. They could only stand where they were quietly. After all, the Yeo family's rules were not that easy to break. Therefore, at this moment, the only thing the grand ancestors could do was to watch Lu Feng leave with their treasures. Finally, Lu Fenglai arrived in front of Tu Tianxin and the grand ancestor. Looking at them, Lu Feng was silent for a moment. After a while, he bowed deeply. Just like that, he bowed all the way down. This scene caused the great ancestor and the others to have a glimmer in their eyes. From the moment they saw Lu Feng until now, although Lu Feng was very humble and polite to the elders, his movements were limited. The grand ancestor knew that this was Lu Feng's majesty as an emperor. He could be humble to anyone, but he could not lose his majesty as an emperor. Therefore, when he bowed, it was just a simple show of respect. However, this time, he bowed all the way down. This kind of etiquette was the most exaggerated Lu Feng had ever shown besides facing his parents. The grand ancestor stretched out his hand and waved gently, lifting Lu Feng up. The grand ancestor looked at Lu Feng with a calm expression. Lu Feng, this is the result of your own hard work. After all, you won. Therefore, the result was also obtained by your own strength. All of this has nothing to do with us. Lu Feng shook his head gently. Although everything was like this in reality, Lu Feng knew that if the Lu family's grand ancestors were not there, how could he have achieved it? At that time, even if he won, he would not have gotten anything. After all, this world was a world where strength was respected. Lu Feng pulled Yeo Qingran beside him and smiled. Qingran, do you remember the grand ancestor? Yeo Qingran raised her head and looked at the Lu family's grand ancestor. After a moment of confusion, a trace of surprise, reverence, and gratitude appeared in her eyes. This time, without Lu Feng's accompaniment, Yeo Qingran learned from Lu Feng and bowed all the way down. The grand ancestor did the same thing and lifted Yeo Qingran up. However, after getting up, Yeo Qingran insisted on bowing again. The grand ancestor was slightly taken aback. On the other hand, Lu Feng just smiled and did not stop her. Grand ancestor, please let her complete the etiquette. It was your help that gave Qingran a new life. And now, with your help, she has been given a second chance at life. Therefore, you can bear it. Finally, after 3 bows, Yeo Qingran stood up. Grand ancestor, I know I don't have any ability, but if you need me for anything, Yeo Qingran is willing to die 1,000 times. The grand ancestor could see the determination in Yeo Qingran's eyes. At this moment, he smiled, a smile of satisfaction. Such a woman who knows how to repay kindness and has a clear character, is enough to make anyone like her from the bottom of their heart. Good, good, Good. From now on, you, Yuyo Qingran, are the daughter-in-law of the Lu family. In an instant, Lu Feng and Yuyo Qingran's faces turned red. This kind of red is so eye-catching, as if it was dyed red. The two of them secretly looked at each other. However, in the next instant, when their gazes met, they quickly averted their gazes. The red on their faces became more obvious. Lu Feng, now that you're 18 years old, you can be considered as an adult. In the Federation, generally, when you become an adult, you can start a family and start a career. However, this is the era of the War of the Kings. Now, you still have a long road ahead of you. Therefore, I don't recommend you to start a family immediately. The Lu family's grand ancestors' consideration was from Lu Feng's point of view. Lu Feng is the taboo monarch. It could be said that in this era, after defeating the 3 supreme youth kings and the master of 6 Dao, he is the closest existence to the emperor realm. Lu Feng is the hope of the human race in this era, the Lu family's hope. They don't want Lu Feng to fall too early. After all, the future of the human race depends on Lu Feng. If Lu Feng chooses to marry so early, it will have a certain impact on his cultivation. After hearing this, Lu Feng looked at Yuyo Qingran beside him and found that in addition to a shy face, her eyes flashed with encouragement and support. Lu Feng smiled slightly, looked at the Grand Ancestor, and said slowly and firmly, "I agree, Grand Ancestor." The Grand Ancestor smiled with satisfaction. This is a kind of satisfaction from the bottom of his heart. When we return to the Lu family, a few of us will help Qingran unblock her meridians. Although we can't make her a demon, in terms of cultivation, she can become a genius existence. This way, she can cultivate to the divine spirit realm in the future. You all still have a long time in the future, a very long time. Although Lu Feng knew that the Grand Ancestor was doing this to make him feel at ease, he was still very grateful. He nodded slightly and glanced at Lu Feng slightly. A trace of confusion appeared in his eyes. Grand Ancestor, where is Senior? The Grand Ancestor knew that the senior Lu Feng was talking about was Tu Tianxin. Originally, he still had some doubts about the relationship between Lu Feng and Tu Tianxin. However, after seeing Tu Tianxin look at Lu Feng and everything Tu Tianxin did for Lu Feng, he suddenly understood. He understood that in the eyes of the mysterious divine king, Lu Feng should be a kind of sustenance for the future. The Grand Ancestor smiled gently. His Majesty has already left. He said that when he wants to look for you in the future, he will appear. Lu Feng nodded gently. Now, he had returned to the human race. When the time comes, he must find an opportunity to tell Senior Tu Tianxin about his experiences over the years. At this moment, in the main hall, the side belonging to the Lu family was incomparably happy and excited. However, many existences in the Yuyo family were abnormally uncomfortable. Of course, they didn't dare to show any of it. After all, in front of them, it was the 4 great ancestors of the Lu family. Any 2 of these 4 existences were enough to make the Grand Ancestor and Second Ancestor of the Yuyo family tired of dealing with them. One must know that there were 4 of them here. The 4 great supreme elders of the Lu family were all dispatched. Of course, if that was all, then it was not a big deal. However, these people had already been informed by Lin Huang of Yuyo. The young existence that appeared before, the existence that everyone called His Majesty, turned out to be the real, peerless divine king. He was the hidden, peerless divine king of the human race. The destiny of the human race for the past 600 years should have been suppressed by him alone. As for the young man next to them, Lin Huang of Yuyo did not introduce him. The many great ancestors who appeared in the universe with Lin Huang of Yuyo did not introduce him either. They were not willing to mention him at all. Therefore, in the eyes of many great ancestors who did not know, Lu Feng seemed to be the person that the divine king valued. If they accidentally provoked him, then they were afraid that the peerless divine king's clone would be attracted again. However, they completely understood that this was just an insignificant clone of the divine king. Even if it was just a clone, it was still the representative of the divine king. If such an existence arrived in person, then the entire Emperor star system would be in an uproar, and an infinitely luxurious space-time anomaly would appear. It would be the universe's tribute to the arrival of the Divine King. In front of the Divine King, no matter how dissatisfied they did not dare to say anything. The only thing they could do now was to show respect on the surface, but in their hearts, they were praying that Lu Feng and the others would leave quickly. However, it seemed that God really did not want it to end like this. This day was destined to be the saddest day for the Yuyo clan. Just as Lu Feng and the others were about to leave, a figure suddenly appeared in the hall. Seeing this figure, many of the Yuyo clan's existences had a strange look on their faces. Among them, Yuyo Lin Huang looked angrily at the Yuyo clan's second ancestor, Yuyo Qingming. The person who appeared was not an ordinary person. He was the only direct descendant of Yuyo Qingming, and also the other hidden genius of the Yuyo clan, Yuyo Gukai. Back then, regarding the use of Yuyo Qingran's blood, it was decided between Yuyo Ronghua and Yuyo Gukai. The two of them had been competing for many years, and they were neck and neck in all aspects. Originally, many existences wanted to let the two of them fight to decide who would use the blood. However, who would have thought that Yuyo Ronghua would suddenly receive a shocking opportunity and directly comprehend the Six Realms' power, the pinnacle of the supreme power? If the blood was given to Yuyo Gukai, it could only create a king of massacre with supreme power. However, if it was given to Yuyo Ronghua, it could create an era's genius. After all, the era's genius represented the existence of the Divine King. Therefore, there was no need to consider the issue of the blood anymore. In the end, Yuyo Qingran's blood became the stepping stone for Yuyo Ronghua's advancement. Naturally, Yuyo Gukai became the loser. However, this failure was not absolute. Because of 10 years of continuous extraction, Yuyo Ronghua's blood had finally evolved completely. Just this year, a few months after the War of the Kings began, he finally condensed the Emperor and Divine King's blood into a supreme power. At that time, Yuyo Qingran was still alive. The blood she produced was no longer of any use to Yuyo Ronghua. Therefore, Yuyo Qingran's blood became exclusive to Yuyo Gukai. In the past few months, every time he used Yuyo Qingran's blood, he could clearly feel the increase in the density of his blood. Chapter 537. He firmly believed that with this support, he would be able to condense his bloodline into a supreme power in less than 10 years. It was a supreme power. It represented the King of Massacre. Although this was the era of the War of the Kings, and the King of Massacre was no longer the same as he was in the past. However, the title of king was still enough to shake everything. After all, there were only 7 known epic monstrous geniuses and young supremes in the current world. His rank 6 monstrous realm monstrous talent in this era of War of the Kings was already second only to those 7 monstrous talents. Moreover, Yuyo Gukai had a huge ambition in his heart. He was Yuyo Qingming, the only direct descendant of the second ancestor of the Yuyo clan. His status was extremely noble, and the amount of resources he could occupy in the Yuyo Emperor's bloodline had reached an unimaginable number. He believed that as long as he could become the King of Massacre, with the endless resources of the Yuyo clan, he would have the qualifications to participate in the struggle for supremacy in the future. Of course, all of this was based on the foundation of him becoming the King of Massacre. The foundation of becoming the King of Massacre was the continuous supply of blood from Yuyo Qingran. Just now, he heard that Yuyo Qingran had been completely released. It seemed that the existence of the Lu clan had come to ask for Yuyo Qingran and took her away. This made Yuyo and Gukai instantly furious. It could be said that at this moment, there was nothing left in his mind. At this moment, he was completely crazy. After all, if Yuyo Qingran left, he would lose all hope. Everything that he had imagined, everything that he had looked forward to ruling the universe, everything would become a real joke. How could he allow such a thing to happen? Therefore, at this moment, he had lost all of his rationality. Without even knowing what existed in the palace, he rashly rushed in. However, when he came in, he was slightly stunned. This was because he saw the angry look on the face of the Yu clan's great ancestor. He saw the anxious and angry look on the face of the second ancestor, who was also his great-grandfather. If it was any other time, he would have already thought about the reason behind this. However, at this moment, when he saw Yu Qingran snuggling up to Lu Feng, his mind went completely berserk. In an instant, Yu Gukai had already walked to Lu Feng's side. At this moment, Tu Tianshun, the great ancestor, and the others were watching the development with a joking expression. Just when Yu Yogu wanted to say something, Yu Yogu and Lin Huang's voices were heard. "How dare you? What kind of occasion is this? You can't just barge in. Get out of here." Lin Huang was truly furious at Featheryu. It had not been easy for him to cut ties with Lu Feng and the rest. However, it seemed that Yu was going to stir up trouble again. Lin Huang could not stand it anymore. If it was in normal times, if they were only facing the existence of other aristocratic families, then perhaps this would be the case. After all, the bloodline of Emperor Yu is also very protective. However, it was different this time because he was facing 4 peak quasi-kings, and more importantly, the incarnation of the Divine King. Once such strength exploded, the bloodline of Emperor Yu would be annihilated unless they used the final trump card left by the great ancestor. These people were existences that they could not afford to offend. However, Yu Gukai did not know what was good for him and insisted on stirring up trouble. Lin Huang, Yu, and Gukai could not stand it anymore. Hearing Lin Huang's angry roar, Gukai was stunned for a moment, but he recovered after a while. He looked at Lin Huang mockingly. Lin Huang was surprised that Gukai would show such an expression to Lin Huang. In the eyes of many existences, this was something completely unbelievable. Who was Yu Gukai? He was the current great ancestor of the Yu clan. Unlike the Lu clan, there were still ancestors in the Lu clan's primitive land. However, the strongest person in the Yu clan seemed to be Yu Gukai. At this moment, he dared to show such an expression to Yu Gukai, the strongest person in the bloodline of Emperor Yu Gukai. This was simply too ridiculous. After a moment, Lu Feng also understood that Yu Gukai must have done something that made Yu Gukai extremely angry. This anger had completely messed up Yu Gukai's mind and made him a little crazy. Lu Feng looked at Lin Huang and Yu Gukai with a mocking expression. Lu Feng disliked the existence of Yu Gukai's bloodline, except for Yu Qingran. At this moment, seeing the internal conflict between them, Lu Feng felt very comfortable. Lin Huang seemed to be stunned by Yu's expression. Yu and Gukai did not react for a moment. However, this situation only lasted for a short period of time. Very soon, he recovered, and there was no longer any sadness or joy on his face. Lin Huang looked at Yu Gukai quietly, and his expression had completely returned to normal. Seeing this, Lu Feng nodded slightly in his heart. Indeed, as the strongest person in the bloodline of Emperor Yu Gukai, he always represented the Yu family. If there were no outsiders at this moment, perhaps it would not be a big deal. However, when these outsiders were present, he had to ensure his attitude at all times. He could not let outsiders look down on the bloodline of Emperor Yu Gukai. Looking at Yu and Gukai, Lin Huang finally spoke. However, the coldness in his words could be felt by anyone. Yu Gukai, what are you doing here? Now, this is an important family matter. You can leave. Vaguely, there was a trace of endless cold, killing intent. Lu Feng understood that Lin Huang's killing intent toward Yu and Gukai at that very moment was probably in Lin Huang's heart. Naturally, Featheryu could easily sense Lin Huang's murderous intent. At this moment, he did not continue to be silent, because he knew that if he was not careful, his only bloodline would make a big mistake. Therefore, Yu Qingming quickly spoke. Gukai, you can leave. If there's anything, we can talk about it later. Now is not the time. Now is indeed not the time because Yu Qingming knew full well why Yu Gukai was here. He naturally understood that this matter had already become a foregone conclusion. If something were to happen to Yu and Gu Kai, that could lead to a very serious problem. After all, although there were only 5 outsiders present at this moment, no one in the world dared to provoke these 5 existences. Although Yu Gu Kai was usually dissatisfied with Lin Huang's words, Yu Gu Kai would still listen. As for Yu Qingming, Yu Gu Kai was even more obedient. However, at this moment, his future was bleak. This kind of loss was simply unbearable for him compared to the loss of his life. He would rather die than give up this opportunity to reach the peak. His current madness had made him completely dizzy, causing him to forget everything. Therefore, at this moment, he did not listen to the words of these 2 ancestors whose strength and status were countless times higher than him. He just looked at Yu Lin Huang even more crazily. Finally, he also spoke. Grand Ancestor, don't you think you've gone too far in some things? In order to make Yu Gu Kai a monster of the era, you can think of any way. However, when it comes to me, when I have the hope of becoming the king of killing, you made such a decision. Don't tell me you don't want me to improve that much. Do you want to dominate the entire Yu Emperor's bloodline so much? In the last sentence, he did not even use honorifics like Grand Ancestor. Instead, he directly used you in a questioning tone. At this moment, hearing Yu Gu Kai's words, Yu Lin Huang's face flushed red. In his eyes, there was a kind of anger that could no longer be concealed, a kind of completely cold, killing intent, and a kind of faint sadness. Thinking back, Yu Lin Huang was so stunning and peerless. He was the king of killing and dominated an era. If it were not for the existence of his family, he might even be able to take that step and become the king of the era. For his family, he gave up everything, gave up his countless glory and future, and even now, he could even throw away his face. Everything he did was just for the revival of the Yu Emperor's bloodline. However, at this moment, in the mouth of his own junior, he became such a despicable person. How could Yu Lin Huang tolerate this? The cold, killing intent spread endlessly at this moment. Such a will was enough to kill a heavenly god countless times in an instant. However, when the cold, killing intent spread to Yu Gu Kai, another kind of terrifying majesty completely froze the killing intent, making it unable to go any further. Looking at Yu Qingming, who was next to Yu Gu Kai, a trace of sadness appeared in Yu Lin Huang's eyes. Why? Qingming, even you're questioning my existence. Yu Qingming shook his head gently. Grand Ancestor, I know all the contributions you have made for the family. I've seen everything you've done for us. I have never questioned your existence. However, this child Gu Kai is already the only bloodline of my bloodline. Moreover, his talent is not bad, and he is already the pinnacle of the killing emperor. If possible, he definitely has the hope of taking that step in the future. It is even possible for him to break through the shackles of the Divine King. I can't watch him die like this. After saying this, Yu Qingming looked at Lu Feng. Regarding the entire matter, everything he knew was learned from the Great Ancestor. If it were not for the arrival of the Divine King's avatar, he might still be cultivating. Yu Lin Huang did not say much about the whole thing, so what Yu Qingming knew was limited. At this moment, looking at his stubborn and crazy descendant, Yu Qingming made a crazy decision. He looked at Lu Tianya, the grand ancestor of the Lu family, and said slowly, Alchemy Saint Lu, I have something to discuss with you. If you agree, I am willing to pay a sufficient price to compensate for your loss. In Yu Qingming's opinion, the leader of everything was Lu Tianya, the grand ancestor of the Lu family. He did not need to consider anything else. The grand ancestor was slightly stunned. He looked at Yu Qingming and nodded gently. Say it. As long as it is not too much, I will agree to it. Seeing the grand ancestor's attitude, Yu Qingming's eyes flashed. However, in the next moment, he looked at Yu Qingming. At this moment, everyone seemed to have realized something. Lin Huang's expression changed drastically. The thing he was most worried about seemed to be happening. The 4 grand ancestors of the Lu family had also guessed something. At this moment, they had a cold and mocking expression on their faces. Yu Qingming, there is nothing for you to do here. Get out of here now. Lin Huang could not let Yu Qingming say these words. He knew that once he said it, all his previous humility and sacrifice would be a complete joke. Chapter 538. At this moment, Lin Huang regretted his decision the most. He regretted that he did not tell them everything to save his face, which led to the endless conflict in front of him. Now, he wanted to tell them everything, but he realized that it was really too late. It was really too late. This was because Yu Qingming had been stimulated by the crazy bloodline of this one and only bloodline. He did not care about anything anymore. Looking at the Grand Ancestor, Yu Qingming said directly, "Alchemy St. Lu, I want her. Could you please return her to us? For this, I'm willing to give you 3 grade 9 god items." 3 grade 9 god items. In the entire universe, this was definitely a shocking amount of wealth. One must know that even in the Divine King clan, there would not be more than a few grade 9 god items. However, at this moment, he made such a shocking offer. Without a doubt, this showed how much Yu Qingming valued this one and only bloodline. In his mind, and in Yu Qingming's mind, in the face of such an offer, the Lu family would definitely agree. Unfortunately, their idea was good, but the result made them feel strange. The Grand Ancestor smiled gently. Unfortunately, this smile was so strange. At this moment, the Grand Ancestor looked at the young man beside him, the young man who was holding Yu Qingran's arm. Similarly, the other 3 Grand Ancestors of the Lu family did the same. They all looked at the young man. Is it not possible? If it's not possible, how about 4 grade 9 god items? If it's still not possible, then 4 grade 9 god items. I only want this girl for 10 years. 10 years, only 10 years. After 10 years, I will return her to you. I can even give her the most honorable treatment and give her enough compensation. Is that okay? Is that okay? It was extremely quiet. Almost no sound could be heard. Yu Lin Huang's face was slightly pale. He looked at Yu Qingming in front of him, and what flashed in his eyes was a kind of strangeness, disappointment, sadness, and sorrow. Suddenly, a voice could be heard in the midst of the silence. Grand Ancestor, I wonder if it's okay for me to ask for 4 grade 9 god items from the family? The owner of the voice was Lu Feng. At this moment, everyone looked at Lu Feng. The Great Ancestor was slightly taken aback. Although he did not understand what Lu Feng was trying to do, he still nodded his head gently. Although the supreme god items are precious, the Lu family still has them. If you need them, you can take them. He did not even ask what Lu Feng needed the grade 9 god items for him. Instead, he directly promised to give them to Lu Feng. Clearly, Yu Qingming and Yu Gukai were slightly stunned by the Great Ancestor's words. After all, what Lu Feng wanted was a grade 9 divine item. At this moment, Yu Qingming looked at Yu Lin Huang next to him. However, he found that this dominant figure of the Yu Emperor's bloodline looked like he was about to give up. In an instant, thinking of the Lu family's attitude, Yu Qingming seemed to have a premonition that something bad was about to happen. Hearing the Grand Ancestor's words, Lu Feng smiled gently. Then, after glancing at Yu Qingming, he focused his attention on Yu Qingming. You must be the 2nd Grand Ancestor of the Yu clan. Yu Qingming did not speak, but nodded gently. At this moment, Lu Feng smiled. This smile made everyone who saw it feel cold. Then I'm willing to give you 4 grade 9 god items. I don't want anything else. I just want his... Lu Feng stretched out his arm and pointed at Yu Qingming. Of course, I just want his life. You can keep his body for yourselves. You see, how about... At this moment, Lu Feng's voice was extremely cold. Everyone who heard it felt like their hearts were frozen. Yu Qingming did not speak. At this moment, the premonition in his heart became more and more obvious. Lu Feng only said these words after asking about his identity. He knew who he was, but he still dared to say these words. In addition to Yu Qingming's expression and the attitude of the 4 Grand Ancestors of the Lu family towards Lu Feng, he seemed to have thought of something at this moment. His face was extremely pale. Although he spent most of his time in closed-door cultivation, he knew about many important things in the universe. Among them, the emergence of Wang Zhan and the rise of the human emperor were the most important things of this era. Of course, he knew about them. At this moment, he finally understood who this junior of the Lu family was. Yu Qingming did not speak, but Yu Qingming was already angry. In his eyes, Lu Feng was just a child of the Lu family. Compared to him, Lu Feng's status was far too inferior. After all, everyone knew that the bloodline of the younger generation of the Lu family was extremely thin. Among the younger generation of the Lu family, Lu Luo's status was undoubtedly the most prominent. He had seen Lu Luo before. Moreover, in his heart, Lu Luo was far from being comparable to him. If that was the case, then Lu Feng was just an ant-like character in his eyes. However, this ant-like character actually dared to say such words. He was Yu Qingming, the future divine king, the pinnacle existence who would ascend to the highest level in the universe. His value could only be priceless. Compared to him, the 4 ninth-grade divine items were simply nothing. Are you looking for death? Yu Qingming's face was twisted crazily. Previously, when he saw the appearance of the great ancestor of the Lu family, he understood that everything before was just a delusion. He no longer had any chance. At this moment, all his beliefs collapsed in an instant. Lu Feng's provocative words made Yu Qingming even crazier. Unfortunately, in the face of Yu Qingming's craziness, Lu Feng did not show any signs of fear. He just stared coldly at Yu Qingming. After a moment, a bloodthirsty look appeared on his face. You can use 4 grade, 9 god items to exchange for her. Why can't I? Lu Feng could clearly feel the helplessness of Yu Qingran in his arms. After Yu Qingming said the terms of the exchange, she was helpless and confused in pain. Lu Feng understood that as a cultivator, how could he not know the significance of grade 9 god items? She was afraid that she would be exchanged back. She tightened her embrace. At this moment, Yu Qingran slowly raised her head. She looked at Lu Feng with a strange look in her eyes. She knew that Lu Feng would not give up on her. Never, ever. At this moment, she really felt that he had grown up. Yu Qingming smiled disdainfully and crazily. Seeing this, Lu Feng disdainfully sighed. He knew that Yu Qingming was on the verge of madness. What is she? If she wasn't useful, I'm afraid I wouldn't even be interested in looking at her. How can she be compared to me? Lu Feng laughed. It was also a kind of laughter. However, his laughter was not crazy. It was a kind of endless coldness. Looking at Yu Qingming, Lu Feng's laughter finally stopped completely after a long time. She, in my eyes, is the real priceless. If he didn't save 4 grade, 9 god items, if this wasn't the Yu clan, then you would have turned into ashes long ago. Cold, bloodthirsty, overbearing. At this moment, Lu Feng did not hide his killing intent at all. So what if this was the Yu clan? When had he, Lu Feng, ever been afraid? In Lu Feng's heart, Yu Qingran's position was irreplaceable. For her, Lu Feng could even throw away life and death. Now, she had suffered so much. If she was weak, how could Lu Feng let her be hurt? Not even the slightest bit. Hearing Lu Feng's words, Yu Qingming's crazy expression slightly froze. He looked at Lu Feng and revealed a trace of disbelief. You said you want to kill me? In my Yu clan, you said you want to kill me? Who gave you such confidence? Who made you so arrogant? Although Yu Qingming was a little crazy at this moment, he was not completely confused. Saying these words in the Yu clan's territory was simply a slap to the Yu clan's face. In his opinion, Lu Feng was crazier and more ignorant than him. Unfortunately, after he said these words, when he wanted to hear the anger of the Yu clan's ancestors, when he wanted to see the strange expression of the Lu clan's ancestors, it did not appear at all. Everything was the same as before. Nothing strange happened. Calm, too calm. He said he wants to kill you. My Yu clan can protect you for a while, but not forever. You, take care of yourself. When the voice came out, Yu Qingming was completely stunned. He turned around and looked at the existence who spoke, the master of the Yuyo clan, Yuyo Lin Huang. Grand Ancestor, what did you say? Yuyo Yu Qingming could not believe what he heard. Although there was a lot of conflict between him and Lin Huang, he was still a genius. No matter what, he was still a monster of the Yuyo clan, a precious treasure of the Yuyo clan. At this moment, the young man's words were a blatant slap to the face of the Yu Emperor's bloodline. As the ancestor of the Yuyo clan, how could Lin Huang say such words? Lin Huang looked at Yuyo Qingming with a calm expression and said slowly, "You deal with this matter yourself. If you don't handle it well, then you will have to deal with everything that happens to the Yuyo clan in the future." Yuyo Qingming's face was pale. He knew that Lin Huang from Feather Yu was serious this time. Looking at the disappointment and pessimism in the eyes of the number one old ancestor of Emperor Yu Yu's bloodline, he knew that Lin Huang was really serious this time. Chapter 539. After saying this, Lin Huang looked at the Lu family's grand ancestor. Lu Tianya, this matter has nothing to do with the Yu Emperor. Moreover, we don't want to care about this, so please don't hold a grudge against the Yu Emperor. After saying that, Feather Nether and Lin Huang actually bowed respectfully to the grand ancestor under everyone's gaze. At this moment, even Lu Feng, who hated the Yu family, could not help but admire Lin Huang's spirit. For the sake of the Yu Emperor, he could even put down his dignity. One had to know that this was a true pinnacle existence. In the entire universe, he was definitely one of the pinnacle overlords, the pinnacle of quasi-king level existence. For such an existence, glory was above everything else. Today, for the sake of his family, he had put down so much. In the end, he even put down his dignity as an invincible almighty. The grand ancestor was silent. After a moment, he let out a long sigh. You should understand that this matter has nothing to do with me. If Lu Feng doesn't have any conditions, then I don't care. The Lu family definitely valued Lu Feng very much. Everyone could imagine this. After all, as long as Lu Feng did not die midway, then in the future, he was bound to become the divine king. Such a young, godly monarch was born with a heaven-shaking destiny, especially in Wang Zhan's era, where the younger generation was incomparably glorious. It could be said that the possibility of a taboo monarch like Lu Feng falling was extremely small. Therefore, the Lu family would definitely take good care of Lu Feng. As long as it was not too much, they would act according to Lu Feng's will. Naturally, today's matter was the same. Therefore, Lin Huang did not have any objections to the grand ancestor's words. Finally, he fell silent. He had put down his dignity and said these words to the Lu family's great ancestor because the Lu family's great ancestor's status was high enough. In the universe, the Lu family's great ancestor was actually one level higher than him. After all, the human king Lu family's position in the universe was much higher than the bloodline of Emperor Yu Yu. Moreover, the great ancestor of the Lu family had another identity, which was alchemy Saint Lu. When the two identities overlapped at the same time, the Lu family's ancestor's identity was more honorable than his. Therefore, he could apologize to the great ancestor of the Lu family and do such a thing. However, Lu Feng was different. Everyone knew that in the future, Lu Feng would definitely be a supreme existence like the Divine King. Moreover, based on the current situation, he might even ascend to become the Overlord of the Epoch and become a supreme existence like the Human King. However, that was all in the future. Although the possibility was very high, it still hadn't come true. Therefore, the current Lu Feng was the person with the most honorable status among the younger generation. However, if such an identity was compared to Lin Huang's current identity, it was still far too inferior. Lin Huang could submit to Lu Tianya, but how could he submit to Lu Feng? Looking at Lu Feng, countless changes flashed through Lin Huang's eyes at this moment. Finally, he seemed to have thought of something. At this moment, he let out a long sigh. There was an indescribable complexity in his eyes. Looking at Lu Feng, he actually slowly bent down in front of everyone. Many people could no longer hear what he said after that. It was not because their voices were too soft, but because this scene was too shocking. They could not believe it. Therefore, at this moment, many existences were completely terrified and were completely dumbfounded. Lu Feng looked at Yu Yu and Lin Huang. He did not say anything. Looking at Lin Huang, in the end, it was Yu Qingran and Lu Feng's arms who slowly tugged at the corner of Lu Feng's clothes. Lu Feng, what you've done now is enough. I'm already very happy, very proud, very proud. After all, the people of the Yu clan have the same blood as me. After all, these people are my ancestors, although she also hated Lin Huang. At this moment, Yu Qingran's heart softened. Hearing this, Lu Feng let out a long sigh. There was a touch of relief in his cold eyes. However, in the blink of an eye, this coldness continued to appear. Grand Ancestor Yu, in the future, as long as the Yu clan doesn't provoke me, then I won't do anything. I hope that there will be no involvement between us in the future. This was already the limit of Lu Feng's guarantee. If the Yu clan really came to provoke him again, then no one would be able to stop him from making his decision. The Yu clan smiled gently and said nothing. In the next moment, his figure slowly disappeared without a trace. In the main hall, many ancestors who had experienced everything before sighed deeply. Today, in front of their greatest enemy, the Lu family, they had lost their dignity. For them, this was an unbearable pain. In the next moment, many existences disappeared. The ancestors of the Yu clan all disappeared from the hall. At this moment, even an idiot would know that something shocking had happened. Yu Qingran was slightly stunned. The endless anger from before had been completely confused by the series of strange things in front of him. He was not an idiot. Previously, he was just blinded by anger. Now that he had reacted, he vaguely felt that he seemed to have made a huge mistake. Yu Qingran looked at Lu Feng and let out a long sigh. Emperor, I know that you have endless resentment in your heart. However, seeing that he's the only bloodline of my family, can you let him go? Hearing this, Yu Qingran's face became even paler, because he had heard the tone of the ancestor who protected him the most. It was full of discussion and even pleading. What kind of person was the second ancestor of Yu Qingran? Looking at the endless time and space, he was definitely the pinnacle of existence. When had he ever bowed and bent his knees like this? Yu Qingran understood that if he was not the only bloodline descendant of Yu Qingran would never have such an expression. Even so, he still could not accept it. After all of these changes were too fast. Lu Feng looked at Yu Qingran. Although he was an invincible existence, an existence on the same level as his two ancestors, Lu Feng did not have a good impression of him. From what Yu Qingran said just now, Lu Feng had already regarded Yu Qingran as his enemy in his heart. He would not allow anyone to hurt her. If someone wants to hurt your loved ones, what would you do? Lu Feng's voice was endless cold. At this moment, he was angry. He was angry from the bottom of his heart. Yu Qingran did not speak. He just stood there silently. As an existence with such a noble status, he had already put down his dignity to speak to Lu Feng in such a manner. This was already his limit. Finally, seeing Yu Qingran's expression, Yu Qingran completely exploded. Ancestor, what are you afraid of? Does the Lu family really dare to go to war with us? At most, he is just an evildoer. For an evildoer, does the Lu family really want to go to war with us? Even Yu Ronghua does not have such power and status to make the two pinnacle divine king clans fight for him. Ancestor, you don't have to worry about it. He wants to kill me? What ability does he have to kill me? Yu Qingran had already gone slightly crazy. The ancestor that he respected the most at this moment was so humble. Now, this miserable treatment made his heart, which had just sobered up, become chaotic again. His voice was constantly roaring. It was a pity that everyone was completely mocking him for his unsightly behavior. Yu Qingran looked at Yu Qingran. A sad look flashed in his eyes. You are wrong. Yu Qingran was slightly stunned. His roaring posture instantly stagnated. He looked at Yu Qingran. His expression was stagnant. Yu Qingran finally sighed. You have been cultivating for too long. Too long. A lot of things have happened in the universe. You don't even know. Yu Ronghua is an evildoer of the new era. But compared to the person in front of you, he is still inferior. Too inferior. Because he is the supreme king of the young kings. He is the taboo king. At this moment, Yu Qingran was at a loss. Taboo king. He had never heard of such a title. In his mind, the evildoers of the new era were already supreme existences. Yu Ronghua was already the pinnacle of evildoers. But now, there was a taboo king who surpassed the new era. How could he believe this? Just before I left, the ancestor already gave me the news. It is the person in front of you. In the battle with Yu Ronghua, he defeated Yu Ronghua, who is a level higher than him. In an instant, Yu Qingran's face lost all color. His body swayed slightly, as if he couldn't support his body. Although he was extremely jealous of Yu Ronghua. But Yu Qingran had to admit Yu Ronghua's peerless talent. He had comprehended two supreme powers, and one of them was the Six Paths power, which was at the peak of the seventh step. This must be the existence of the Divine King. Although he vaguely heard that King Zhan had already appeared, but in Yu Qingran's mind, Yu Ronghua had a very high chance of winning this King Zhan. After all, Yu Ronghua comprehended two supreme powers. One of them was the Six Path power. Among the two supreme powers, Feather Spirit Glory should be the most powerful one. But now, it seems that the truth was not so. The young man in front of him, such an arrogant young man, actually defeated Yu Ronghua, who was a level higher than him. He was defeated to the point of collapse. What kind of terrifying strength was needed to achieve this? Chapter 540. As for Lu Feng's battle record, except for Yu Gukai and Yu Qingran, the rest of the people present knew about it. They naturally knew what kind of person Lu Feng was. Yu Qingran, who was leaning close to Lu Feng, slowly raised her head. She quietly looked at Lu Feng. At this moment, she realized that Lu Feng had really changed. He was no longer the Lu Feng who was called trash and needed her protection. After saying all this, Yu Qingming suddenly became silent. The next moment, there was a slight look of reluctance in his eyes. But in the end, a touch of determination appeared. The next moment, he slowly raised his arm and gently waved it towards Yu Gukai. In an instant, Yu Gukai's body seemed to shatter and gradually disappeared into nothingness. Seeing this scene, Lu Feng's eyes flashed a trace of fluctuation. He naturally knew that this was not Yu Qingming's intention to kill Yu Gukai. This was only a type of seal, a complete and irreversible seal. Yu Gukai looked at the old ancestor with a look of disbelief. He struggled, he roared, he went crazy. Unfortunately, he could not even make a sound. He was only a first-layer demigod, the Emperor of Massacre. Even a high-level god could easily kill him countless times. In the face of an invincible existence, how could he have any power to resist? Everything was done. During this time, Lu Feng did not say anything. The four ancestors of the Lu family did not say anything. They just watched quietly. Finally, when everything was done, Yu Qingming's face showed a touch of vicissitudes and a touch of dullness. Everyone, I've already sealed him away. This is an irreversible seal. With me doing it, unless it's the Divine King, no one else can undo this seal. The time I set for the seal is 10,000 years. In the next 10,000 years, Serene Feather Gukai will forever be sealed and won't appear in this world. I think that after 10,000 years, you'll definitely have reached the Supreme Mastery Realm, right? At that time, even if he appears, he won't be able to affect you. 10,000 years had passed, and the War of the Kings had already ended. If Lu Feng won, he would ascend to the peerless and glorious Holy Emperor position. He would unify the era for tens of thousands of years. At that time, there wouldn't be any obstacles for Yu to wake up. After all, compared to Lu Feng at that time, he was just an ant. If Lu Feng failed, then the appearance of Yu and Gukai would mean nothing. After all, Lu Feng had already failed. Such a punishment, being sealed for tens of thousands of years, was definitely incomparably painful. Such a punishment was more than enough. After all, Lu Feng didn't want to kill all of them. What he wanted was to not be disturbed and not have any worries. Looking at the second ancestor of the serene feather family, who was countless times older, the few ancestors of the Lu family sighed slightly. All of this couldn't be blamed on others. If they wanted to blame someone, they could only blame the younger generation of the serene feather family for being too arrogant. It was originally just a battle to fulfill the promise of the past. It was clearly just an ordinary battle between families. But who would have thought that it would evolve into such an ending? First, the serene feather family unexpectedly produced the seventh king of the War of the Kings, which was also the third king of the human race. It shook the universe, causing countless races to tremble in fear. After that, Lu Feng was even more astounded by the universe. 2 months ago, he was still in the initial upheaval transformation realm. With that crazy performance in the battle with the Demon King, he was able to break through to the peak upheaval transformation realm. However, in just 2 months, he had actually reached the peak of the perfect stage. Even his Psyche Master cultivation had also entered the peak Psyche Master King realm. Such a scene could no longer be described as shocking. This was because no one had ever seen or heard of anyone who could advance at such a terrifying speed like Lu Feng's. From an ordinary person who was nothing to the peak of the realm below the demigod realm, he had only used a little more than a year, not even 2 years. This speed had already surpassed even the human kings of the past. Peerless talent and crazy cultivation speed made Lu Feng's power even more terrifying. In the current world, more and more existences had already determined that Lu Feng was an existence that surpassed the immortal king and demon king. Of course, if that was the case, then this battle wouldn't be a big deal. After all, this was just a display of 2 monsters. But what happened next really sent Lu Feng's name to the peak, sending him back to the top of the War of the Kings. He had surpassed the immortal king and demon king. Lu Feng could easily crush Rong Huayu when he went all out. This was what everyone expected, although Feather Yu Rong Hua was 1 rank higher than Lu Feng. But compared to the demon king, he was too far behind. Back then, the Demon King was comparable to 6 supreme powers, which was 1 level higher than Lu Feng. But in the end, he was crazily suppressed. The existence of 6 supreme powers had been completely suppressed. Now, these 2 existences were naturally even more miserable. However, such a one-sided battle had a shocking turn of events. Rong Huayu had awakened the imprint of the power of 6 paths that existed in time and space. He had awakened the will of the Master of 6 Paths. The Master of 6 Paths. He was the true supreme overlord of the primitive immortal and demon era. He was the greatest existence besides the legendary supreme ruler. Although such an existence was bound in a body and only had limited strength, the power he could erupt was absolutely invincible. However, in the face of this invincible existence, Lu Feng had suppressed him. The battle this time was not a simple and casual battle. It represented the ultimate collision between 2 great eras. One was the pinnacle of this era's monstrous geniuses, while the other was the pinnacle overlord of the primordial immortal devil era. The final result was Lu Feng's victory, and the appearance of this result pushed Lu Feng to a new height. No matter how terrifying the immortal and demon kings were, there had never been a story of them fighting across eras. In the collision, the immortal king had been defeated by Lu Feng in an insignificant domain, and the demon king was the same. Even if it was only the demon king's clone, in the eyes of many existences, it represented the maximum combat power that the demon king could use at that moment. When the demon king fully recovered, Lu Feng would inevitably enter a new realm, a realm that was even more terrifying and shocking. The theme of this era has been completely clear. Emperor Lu Feng would definitely become an existence that would shock the world. Even the immortal and demon kings are destined to become foils. Although they are incomparably dazzling, they can't escape this sad fate in the end. After a few months, Lu Feng once again became the recognized #1 person in the Battle of the Kings. He was also the absolute #1 person in the history of the Battle of the Kings. Under his brilliance, even the monstrous geniuses who might not appear in an era were pitiful foils. This was a great tragedy. In just a few hours, the few of them returned to the Liu family. Liu Feng's parents did not return together after parting in the Outer Realm battlefield. It seemed that Liu Tao's research had reached the end. He and Yin Shenwei were searching for some rare divine items in the Outer Realm battlefield. As long as they found them, Liu Tao's broken path to becoming the Divine King would be repaired again. And at that time, he would be a true monstrous genius of the era. He would definitely be much stronger than the Blood King and the others. Liu Fenglai said that his home was in the Cymbidium. Although he had lived in the Liu family when he was young, those memories were some bad ones. If the Liu family had not helped him so much this time, Liu Feng might have returned to the Cymbidium. Of course, Liu Fenglai had another reason for coming here. That was Yuyo and Qingran. Although the Liu family was filled with countless tragic memories. However, the two of them still had many sweet memories in this place. For 3 days, Liu Feng, Yuyo, and Qingran were together, constantly searching for the happy memories of their childhood. Looking at the clouds of the past, watching the sunset, and watching the younger generation of the Liu family playing and chasing each other. All kinds of happy memories kept emerging. During this time, Liu Feng also wanted to look for Lulu. However, the old ancestors of the Liu family told Liu Feng that Lulu had already left to study at the Federal University. Liu Feng had already guessed this. Although Lulu had experienced a lot, she was still a child. It was her nature to enjoy a lively atmosphere. And in the Liu family, there was nothing but boredom. Most of her peers were immersed in endless cultivation. As for the younger ones, Lulu probably wouldn't like to play with them either. However, Liu Feng still felt a little strange when he heard that Lulu had gone to the Federal University. After all, Liu Feng was a student at the Federal University. He hadn't expected that his cousin would become his junior. When he thought about how he would soon be going to the Federal University, Liu Feng didn't contact Lulu. He wanted to give her a surprise. 3 days later, in the Liu family's main hall, Liu Feng and Yuyo Qingran stood there quietly. In front of them were many elders and the head of the Liu family, Liu Shan. This time, Liu Fenglai had come here to say goodbye. Of course, Liu Fenglai couldn't say goodbye. However, it was true that he wanted to leave. Looking at Liu Feng, Liu Shan was silent for a moment. After a while, he slowly opened his mouth and said, "Actually, continuing to stay in the Liu family won't do you any good. You have already entered the pinnacle of the demigod realm. As for the cultivation method you cultivate, it is destined that it will not be stable. However, Liu Feng, I hope that you will remember one thing. No matter what, the Human King's Liu family will always be behind you. You're not alone. No matter who it is that wants to bully you, you have to remember that the Human King's Liu family is behind you. You must remember this clearly." Hearing this, Liu Feng was silent for a moment. After a while, he nodded deeply. He knew that this was the Human King's Liu family's attitude. No matter how big of a mess Liu Feng caused outside, the Liu family would do their best to protect Liu Feng. This was the family's attitude. Looking at Liu Feng's appearance, Liu Shan smiled gently. "These are some divine items. Take them. Your martial Tao incarnation is about to enter the next level. With these things, you will have more than enough." Previously, when he had been at the Liu family, Liu Feng had asked about the martial Tao incarnation. At that time, because time had been tight, Liu Feng had not condensed it. However, this time, the Liu family had prepared enough divine items for him. "I know that your martial Tao incarnation is extremely terrifying. It is difficult to find a comparable one in the current world. The amount of resources required is also an astronomical figure. However, what I prepared for you this time is more than enough." After taking out the storage crystal, Liu Feng sized it up slightly. His expression froze slightly. Although Liu Feng had already imagined that there would be a lot of divine items, when he really saw them, Liu Feng was still shocked by the amount. The amount inside was really a little too exaggerated. Liu Feng believed that these resources would be enough to condense his martial Tao incarnation to the level 8. let alone the level 7 martial Dao incarnation. The reason for that was because that number was simply too terrifying. Thank you for the family's consideration. This time, I will be heading to the Federal University. In terms of martial arts, I have the guidance of the family and many elders. With the human king scripture and my countless battle experiences, I will not be confused about anything. What I lack now is the knowledge of psychic. During this time, I want to learn some psychic knowledge from teacher Dao Song Tian. Lu Feng had 2 souls, so he had to become stronger as a psychic. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to unleash his peak combat strength. Thus, the direction of his cultivation was to become a psychic. As for where Lu Feng intended to go, these people all knew. They all agreed with him on this point. The Lu family's great ancestor was also a psychic. However, he was different from Lu Feng. He had the aptitude to become a psychic through his bloodline. The great ancestor was a void arch. This was something that everyone in the universe knew. Unfortunately, the amount of guidance he could provide to Lu Feng was really limited. The great ancestor was a sacred alchemy saint. His main cultivation direction was still the path of alchemy. It could be said that all his cultivation was biased towards alchemy. His cultivation method was not suitable for Lu Feng. Furthermore, his knowledge could not be compared to the federal universities. Chapter 541. Furthermore, the fact that Lu Feng had a good relationship with the Federal University was also a good thing in their eyes. After all, the Federal University was one of the 3 most terrifying forces of the human race. Once the Federal University's hidden trump cards were revealed, the power displayed by the Federal University would be no less than the Lu families. Lu Feng had the protection of these 2 terrifying forces, so his future path would be much smoother. In that case, you should go. Remember, safety is the most important thing. Lu Feng nodded his head gently and led Yuyo and Qingran outside. Before heading to the Federal University, Lu Feng had to make a trip back to the Cymbidium. After all, that was his home. He had already made an appointment with Li Tianlai. After contacting Li Tianlai, they would head to the Federal University together. However, when Lu Feng left, he didn't ask the Lu family's patriarch to tear open the void and send him over. He chose to use his own spaceship to leave slowly. Lu Feng could now travel through space. However, his power was limited, so the distance he could travel in one go wasn't too long. This time, he was bringing Yuyo and Qingran with him. With his current strength, it was unrealistic for him to bring someone with him for a long time. Furthermore, even if he used the Lu family's exclusive top-notch spaceship, it would take at least a month to travel from here to the Cymbidium. During this time, Lu Feng wanted to relax. Soon, the 2 of them received a top-notch spaceship from the Lu family's warehouse. Its level of luxury was unparalleled. After all, Lu Feng had done a lot of research on machinery. He could tell at a glance that this spaceship was much better than the top-notch spaceships used by the Federation. Sitting in the spaceship, one could continuously travel through space. Here, the degree of comfort was also very good. For the first 10 days, Lu Feng and Yu Qingran enjoyed their time together. Finally, on the 11th day, Lu Feng decided to have a showdown with Yu Qingran. He knew that Yu Qingran would definitely know about Mu Shuiyan's matter. If he had to wait until the end to tell her, then he might as well tell her everything in advance. Looking at Lu Feng's hesitant appearance, the first one to laugh was Yu Qingran. She looked at Lu Feng with a playful smile and asked, "Lu Feng, are you going to talk about Mu Shuiyan?" Lu Feng was stunned. He looked at Yu Qingran. He didn't know how she heard these things. Seeing Lu Feng's astonished appearance, Yu Qingran smiled. Once again, Lu Feng was touched and smiled. She gently walked to Lu Feng's side and gently grabbed Lu Feng's hand. Then, she gently leaned on Lu Feng's chest. Lu Feng, an ancestor of the Lu family, has already told me about these things. Lu Feng was silent. He was completely silent. Lu Feng knew that many ancestors of the Lu family didn't want him to be distracted by this matter. They specifically looked for Yu Qingran in advance. Seeing Lu Feng's silent appearance, Yu Qingran sighed softly. All her movements and sound were so soft that Lu Feng's heart was slowly trembling. You don't need to say anymore. I understand everything. Actually, from the day you came to the bloodline of Emperor Yu for me, I can understand everything you did. I know that your memories have been sealed. That's why you came too late. I know that you have no memories of the past. You don't remember me at all. That's why you found a new lover. I know that all of this is not something you can control. Actually, I can understand all of this. Lu Feng gently hugged Yu Qingran. However, at this moment his arms were constantly trembling. Lu Feng's heart was filled with a strange feeling. At this moment, he couldn't say a word. Lu Feng quietly enjoyed this tranquility. After a long time, he finally let out a long sigh. I know that this is very unfair to you. She had suffered endless suffering. She had been betrayed by both her family and her lover. It was difficult for her to survive. However, he had forgotten about her and found someone else he liked. This was very unfair to Yu Qingran. Hearing this, Yu Qingran smiled indifferently. Lu Feng could clearly see that she really didn't care. Actually, I know that you have also suffered a lot. In less than 2 years, you have reached where you are today. You have experienced countless life and death situations. You have been hunted by billions of races. You have faced countless shocking almighties. You have challenged your limits time and time again. You have been very tired, very hard. The old ancestor of the Lu family once told Yu Qingran everything about Lu Feng. However, after hearing this, Yu Qingran didn't look very proud. The biggest fluctuation in her heart was a kind of pity. What she saw wasn't Lu Feng's glory, but Lu Feng's suffering. Actually, I know all of this. Your old ancestor once told me that your ambition in this life is to constantly become stronger. What you want is to surpass the primogenitor human emperor. Your madness has become the universe's legend. I'm aware of all of this. That was enough for him. Really, it is enough. This was what she had told him before. This was what he had promised her. Even though all of his memories were sealed by the supremacy of the other path. But he still instinctively remembered her request for him. He still didn't want to forget her. He still instinctively remembered everything she said. This is enough. Really, it is enough. All right, let's not talk about these things. I don't care about Mu Xuan. I just hope that she doesn't mind my existence. At this moment, Lu Feng's heart was burning. He had never felt as happy as he did now. This was a kind of surprise that couldn't be brought by an increase in strength. It was a kind of joy that surpassed any other kind of happiness. Lu Feng looked at Yu Qingran's delicate face and finally kissed her gently. According to Lu Feng's estimation, it would take at least a month to reach the Cymbidium from the Human King planet. However, they had only used 25 days to get there. Lu Feng also understood that the Lu family spaceship was too powerful. It was much more powerful than the Federation's top-grade spaceships. If it weren't for this, they would have taken at least 5 more days to reach the Federation. When this top-grade spaceship landed in the center of the Cymbidium interstellar spaceship, it caused a stir. Although there were many top-grade spaceships in the Federation, but most of them were for the use of the various large financial groups. And the ones that were publicly used were only between super life-bearing planets. A third-grade life-bearing planet like the Cymbidium was rarely seen in 100 years. When a spaceship landed, the entire interstellar spaceship center was in an uproar. Countless people scrambled to see it. After all, it was their first time seeing such a spaceship in real life. Apart from these people, the staff in the Interstellar Spaceship Center were also busy. The VIP passageway was opened. Attendants stood at the side of the passageway, welcoming the arrival of the spaceship with the greatest ceremony. Therefore, when Lu Feng stepped out of the spaceship, he saw countless people scrambling to see him. Many staff members lined the passageway to welcome him. If it had been anyone else, they would have either felt uncomfortable or arrogant. However, Lu Feng was only slightly shocked. After a while, he completely recovered. He had seen far too many things now. The number of powerhouses watching any battle was greater than the total population of the Cymbidium. One had to know that when he had fought the Demon King, there had been at least a few billion people watching. And among these billions of people, even the weakest one had a martialist cultivation base. There were definitely no more than 100 martialists in the entire Cymbidium. Therefore, this kind of scene was nothing to Lu Fenglai. He watched as Lu Feng was surrounded by countless people. A martialist who was about to leave the Cymbidium frowned slightly. Previously, he had been invited by the Cymbidium government to come here. However, even when he had first arrived, the scene hadn't been so exaggerated. Now, someone else had actually appeared with such extravagance. Clearly, this martialist was very dissatisfied. His expression was very obvious, and the warriors around him who had accompanied him to leave could all see it. They were all high-level people in the Interstellar Spaceship Center, so they naturally knew the power that Lu Feng's spaceship represented. Therefore, they simply didn't care about this martialist's dissatisfaction. A soldier came to the martialist's side and said softly, "Sir, this spaceship is the Human King's Lu family's top-notch spaceship." When he heard this, the martialist's eyes narrowed slightly. A moment later, he fell silent. Then, he stood aside and waited for Lu Feng to pass first. At the moment, the martialist's heart was in a perilous situation. Unlike the staff of the Interstellar Spaceship Center, he understood everything very well. Naturally, he knew about the Human King's Lu family. He also knew what it meant to be able to ride the Human King's Lu family's top-notch spaceship. It's actually a direct descendant of a Human King's bloodline. Why has such a distinguished existence graced the Cymbidium with his presence? To be able to ride the Lu family's top-notch spaceship, one could only be a high-level member of the Human King's Lu family or a direct descendant of the Human King's Lu family. When he saw Lu Feng's face, he naturally knew that such a young existence like Lu Feng couldn't possibly be a high-level member of the Human King's Lu family. In that case, he could only be a direct descendant of the Human King's bloodline. The Human King's Lu family. That was the #1 bloodline in the world, and the Human King's Lu family was the #1 aristocratic family in the world. As a martialist, he naturally knew what the Human King's Lu family represented. This was the most frightening power in the human tribe that could stand on equal footing with the Federation government. Furthermore, the Human King's Lu family's direct descendant was extremely rare. Any one of them would be an existence that the head of a super life-sustaining planet's government would personally welcome. However, such an existence had actually come to the Cymbidium, an unknown third-grade life-sustaining planet. This made him feel extremely puzzled. Forget it. This kind of peak existence is too far away from me. There's no point in thinking about this. As he thought about this, Lu Feng had already walked past him. It was a pity that Lu Feng didn't even look at him. He walked past him and disappeared at the end of the hallway. Chapter 542. After exiting the spaceship, Lu Feng's first stop was his home. Yu Qingran came out with Lu Feng to relax. She would soon return to the Lu family. After all, the Lu family's ancestor had promised to personally guide Yu Qingran. If Yu Qingran wanted to become a god in the future, she would have to cultivate diligently. She planned to spend some time with Lu Feng before returning to the Lu family to cultivate. Therefore, wherever Lu Feng went, she would naturally follow. Soon, the two of them finally arrived outside his own villa. At this moment, Lu Feng was filled with mixed feelings. Looking at the familiar scene, the place that carried Lu Feng's sealed memories and his childhood, he let out a long sigh. Qingran, when I left, I was just a weak existence. I wasn't even a high-level warrior. But now, when I return, I have the strength to slay a god. Everything is so slow, but also so fast. Although Lu Feng had only left for a little more than a year, if the time spent in the realm of time, and the realm of time was added, it would be close to 10 years. Therefore, Lu Feng felt that time passed very slowly. However, to Lu Feng, everything happened as if it was yesterday. Therefore, everything was so fast that it felt like it was only a few days ago. Gently pulling Lu Feng's arm, Yu Qingran smiled. Lu Feng, you have to know that as a powerhouse, your future is bound to be bright and limitless. Your lifespan is much, much more than that of an ordinary person. At that time, the time spent cultivating would easily be calculated in hundreds of years. So it's only a few years. It's normal. You don't have to care too much about it. Hearing this, Lu Feng nodded gently. In fact, Lu Feng was completely aware of this. He was just feeling a little strange for a moment, but he wasn't being overly emotional. Qingran, this is where I lived after leaving the Lu family. Apart from you, this is the place where all the joy of my childhood was concentrated. Looking at the villa in front of him, Lu Feng's heart seemed to have returned to the past. Unlike the Lu family, Lu Feng didn't have to worry about food or clothing in the Cymbidium villa. Most of the people he interacted with were ordinary people. With Lu Feng's family background and his parents' fake identities, he was already very satisfied with his life. He was already considered a person above the common people here. In addition, he didn't have many troubles here, so Lu Feng was really happy. It could be said that this villa carried Lu Feng's childhood memories, except for Yuyo and Qingran. Qingran, come in. After saying this, Lu Feng reopened the door of the villa. Previously, before leaving home, Lu Feng had completely locked down the villa. In this way, except for himself, if anyone wanted to enter, they would have to resort to violence. This was also for safety reasons. After opening the door of the villa, Lu Feng stepped inside. Behind him, Yu and Qingran followed closely. Soon, the two appeared in the living room. Looking at the familiar surroundings, Lu Feng relaxed and smiled. In this familiar environment, he could feel more comfortable. He didn't have to act like he did outside. The house was basically still spotless. The cost of the villa was as high as hundreds of millions, so it was naturally well equipped. Not to mention year, even if it took 10 or even 100 years, as long as there was still energy, this place would still be as clean as before. Sit down, Qingran. Lu Feng pointed at the luxurious water sofa and said to Yu, this water sofa was one of Lu Feng's favorite amenities in the past. After seeing Yu and Qingran sit down, Lu Feng turned and walked into the kitchen. He opened the door of the refrigerator, took a few bottles of drinks, and walked out. It had to be said that the benefits of the development of science and technology were endless. The refrigerator could reach the peak of ultra-low temperature and the strongest preservation technology, which could extend the shelf life of ordinary food by 10 times or even 100 times. The shelf life of these drinks was as long as a few years, plus the refrigeration technology, so Lu Feng didn't worry about the expiration of the drinks. After going back and forth in each room, Lu Feng finally returned to the living room. In the more than a year, Lu Feng had seen too many things. It could be said that he had really experienced hundreds of millions of life and death situations and experienced innumerable pain and destruction. Of course, these were some of the bad experiences. In addition, Lu Feng also saw a lot of things. For example, the immortal palace of the Chaos King in the Tianyun system, the central building of the Alchemist Alliance, the last core area of the Massacre Abyss, and the altar in the deepest part of Gufang Star. These were all miracles of the universe, which made people look up to and admire them. Those things were more than 1 billion times more powerful than this villa. However, in Lu Feng's heart, his villa was the warmest place. It was the place that made him most reluctant to leave. In this villa, Lu Feng stayed for another night. It could be considered as a way to reminisce about his lost youth. The next day, he left with Yu and Qingran. This time, Lu Feng was going to the Cymbidium branch of the Federal University. When Lu Feng arrived, the Cymbidium branch was already on holiday. They had even been on holiday for a long time. About 2 months ago, when Lu Feng had just walked out of the battlefield, the Federal University was basically on holiday. After that, Lu Feng spent another month cultivating and rushed here in a month. 2 months had passed since then. Today, 2 months later, the Federal University was about to start its new semester. Lu Feng vaguely saw that many students had already arrived at the school. I didn't expect these students to be so hardworking. Lu Feng gave a long sigh. Hearing his sigh, Yu smiled mischievously. Yeah, they won't be like you, skipping classes all day. Yu already knew that Lu Feng was still a student of the Federal University. He was even a student of the General Hospital. Unfortunately, since becoming a student there, Lu Feng hadn't even attended a single day of classes. Yu knew this, so she found it funny and used it to laugh at Lu Feng. Lu Feng was a bit embarrassed, but he didn't say anything, because he knew this was the truth. When Lu Feng walked into the school gate, he was stopped again. The one who stopped him was the same security guard from before. When Lu Feng came here for the first time, he was also stopped by the security guard. At that time, he contacted Director Wan through the Sky Network and was let in. At that time, he had driven his own suspension car into the city. The security guard was still the same security guard. Lu Feng was still the same Lu Feng. Unfortunately, Lu Feng still remembered him, but the security guard didn't recognize Lu Feng anymore. This is the school area. No one is allowed to casually enter. Although Lu Feng was only 18 years old, his experience over the years gave him an aura of vicissitudes. Just this aura of vicissitudes made Lu Feng not look like a student at all. Hearing this, Lu Feng smiled, slowly said, "You're still the same as before." The security guard was a bit surprised. "You know me before?" The security guard thought that his memory was pretty good, because those who could come to the Federal University were either people with excellent grades or people with strong backgrounds. He didn't want to offend either of them. Therefore, everyone would try their best to remember it clearly. Only in this way would they not make any mistakes. But no matter how he looked, he couldn't recognize Lu Feng Lai. So he was really confused. Lu Feng smiled. "A year and a half ago, I came here to report. At that time, I came a month late and drove a hover car. Do you still remember?" The security guard didn't say anything. He just went silent for a while. He was quietly thinking. Finally, he seemed to have thought of something. At this moment, his expression became somewhat strange. "You are that Lu Feng?" He looked at Lu Feng a few times, but couldn't connect Lu Feng with the Lu Feng of the past. Back then, Lu Feng was personally let in by Director Wan. Naturally, the security guard had to remember Lu Feng's mysterious background clearly. Unfortunately, the difference between the Lu Feng of the past and the present was too big. So big that even he, who thought that his memory was pretty good, couldn't confirm that the person in front of him was really that Lu Feng. "You are really Lu Feng?" After observing for a long time, he seemed to have vaguely seen a few similarities. So he asked uncertainly. Lu Feng, on the other hand, simply smiled. "It's the real deal. Besides, this time, I'm here to look for the principal. If it's an imposter, if I'm a fake, I'd be courting death." Hearing this, the security guard finally believed it a little. "Well then, I'll ask first. After all, I don't dare confirm your identity casually. If there's no problem, I'll let you in." Lu Feng shrugged helplessly. Although he was called an emperor, he wasn't arrogant and despotic. At times like this, he was very calm. Seeing Lu Feng's indifferent expression, the security guard dialed the Sky Network of the Department of Political Education. He wanted to confirm whether someone was really here to see the principal. Seeing this, Yu Qingran, who was standing quietly beside Lu Feng, wanted to laugh. Seeing her expression, Lu Feng could only shrug helplessly. He hadn't expected this situation. When he entered the General Hospital, he had already erased all the certificates of the Federal University's Cymbidium branch. As for the certificate of the General Hospital, he hadn't reported it yet. Naturally, he didn't have it. Therefore, when facing the security guard just now, Lu Feng didn't even mention the identity certificate at all. At this moment, seeing Yu Qingran's smiling face, Lu Feng could only stand there helplessly. Chapter 543. 10 minutes later, the security guard finally connected to the Sky Network of the Department of Political Education. After a few words, he came to Lu Feng's side with a strange expression. "Sir, I don't know why you're here, but I want to tell you that if you don't leave, I'll have to inform the guards." Just now, the security guard had sent Lu Feng's identity information to the Department of Political Education. Unfortunately, the Department of Political Education did not have any information about Lu Feng's identity. Moreover, the people from the Department of Political Education did not say that anyone was looking for the principal today. At this moment, he was certain that Lu Feng was not from this school. He probably had some ulterior motives, or he was just here to cause trouble. Lu Feng stood there helplessly. He did not say anything. He just opened a Sky Network and dialed Li Tianlai's number. Li Tianlai was really good to Lu Feng. The moment he saw Lu Feng's number, he picked it up. In an instant, that familiar laughter came from the Sky Network again. "How is it, junior brother? How long will it take for you to come? I've been waiting for you. Ever since you became the champion of the Battle of the Kings, I've been waiting for you here every day." A month ago, Lu Feng had shocked the galaxy and fought against the Master of Six Paths. He had established the prestige of an era and almost ignited an immortal sacred site. Many existences in the universe had endless respect for him. Of course, Li Tianlai knew about it too. At that time, he was really shocked. When he first met Lu Feng, he was already at the peak of the second demigod realm. In the past year, with the help of the inheritance, he had finally entered the peak of the fourth demigod realm. The Dongru Emperor of the past was an existence of the Void Emperor. His power was equivalent to a peerless virtual king of the fifth ancient realm. With his inheritance, Li Tianlai would not have a problem ascending to godhood. However, that would still take a long time. At the very least, he shouldn't think too much about it in the next few decades. After all, it was too difficult to become a god. His current strength was already comparable to a peak deity, but Li Tianlai understood that his strength was really nothing in front of his junior brother. The Master of Six Dao was definitely an existence that stood at the pinnacle of existence. No one below the true god level could stand against him. However, after Lu Feng unleashed his full combat power, he was beaten to a level where he almost instantly withered away. From this, one could see just how terrifying Lu Feng's strength was. More than a year ago, when he met Lu Feng was just an ordinary youth. However, Lu Feng at that time only needed to release his own prestige in front of him to easily extinguish him countless times. But who would have thought that Lu Feng would be able to shock the world to such an extent in such a short period of time, while he was relying on the inheritance to make rapid progress? So much so that he had to look up to Lu Feng. Upon hearing this hearty laughter, Lu Feng's heart was filled with joy. He knew that he was about to meet his senior brother. "Senior brother, you must be joking. I also had some matters to attend to during this period, so I came a little late. After I was done, I came here directly." Li Tianlai nodded gently. He didn't care much about it. He knew that Lu Feng had just returned to the human race. The human king and the Lu family definitely had a lot of things to discuss with Lu Feng. Although the Federal University was Lu Feng's school and Dao Songtian was Lu Feng's teacher, Lu Feng was still a member of the Lu family. Returning to the Lu family first and reporting to the Lu family was naturally not a big deal. "All right, junior brother, come in first. I will take you to the capital administrative planet in a while to meet teacher. It just so happens that I have a lot of things to ask teacher." Lu Feng nodded gently. However, a moment later, he revealed a slightly embarrassed expression. "Senior brother, I'll have to trouble you to talk to this security guard first. Otherwise, I really won't be able to enter. My previous school certificate seems to have been erased. As for the new certificate belonging to the General Hospital, it seems that it has not been activated because I haven't reported to the school. Therefore, I am now trapped at the entrance." Upon hearing Lu Feng's words, Li Tianlai was slightly stunned. Who was Lu Feng? He was an unparalleled existence. However, at this moment, he was trapped at his own door and could not enter. This was undoubtedly the biggest joke in the world. Of course, Li Tianlai only treated it as a joke. After all, given Lu Feng's current status and strength, he would not care too much about Lu Feng's current strength. "All right, wait a moment. I will pass down the order." After saying this, Li Tianlai closed the Sky Network. At this moment, Lu Feng finally calmed down. He knew that Li Tianlai would take care of everything. As expected, the security guard's suspicious gaze did not last long. His Sky Network connector sent out a signal. This was a signal that someone was calling him. "Pick it up now. I think this is your principals." The security guard's expression was slightly respectful. A moment later, he opened the Sky Network connector. Li Tianlai was a godlike existence in the entire Symbidium. Many people already knew his identity. He was a teacher from the General Hospital and a disciple of the principal of the Federal University, Dao Songtian. He was also a terrifying demigod. His identity was absolutely unparalleled in the entire human race, at least on the surface. Therefore, although Li Tianlai worked with them, in their hearts, Li Tianlai was a godlike existence. Indeed, after opening the Sky Network connector and seeing the name displayed on it, the security guard's respectful expression became even more obvious. He kept nodding his head at the Sky Network. His expression was unusually respectful. Finally, when everything was done, he closed the Sky Network gently. At this moment, he no longer looked at Lu Feng with the same suspicion as before. That number just now was Li Tianlai's. It cannot be faked. Therefore, he was certain of Lu Feng's identity. He looked at Lu Feng with a slightly fearful expression. For a moment, he did not know what to say. Lu Feng did not care about this at all. This kind of ordinary person was destined to have no interaction with him. Besides, with his current status and identity, how could he blame an ordinary person? Lu Feng smiled gently and said, "Now, my identity is confirmed." The security guard nodded fearfully. Yes, yes. Lu, Sir Lu, I was ignorant and offended you. Please don't take it to heart. Seeing the security guard's fearful expression, Lu Feng smiled gently. It's okay. What you did just now was not wrong. This kind of conscientiousness is how you should behave. How could I blame you? Also, there is no need to call me Sir Lu. I'm just a student. You can just call me by my name. After saying this, Lu Feng pulled Yu Qingran's arm and walked directly into the school. Lu Feng knew that he and this security guard were destined to have no interaction in the future. He will be a security guard here for the rest of his life. His future is the vast galaxy era. Perhaps in the future, he will not be able to come here again. Therefore, after saying this, Lu Feng walked directly into the school. Looking at Lu Feng's back, the security guard's face was filled with all kinds of expressions. But in the end, these expressions turned into a kind of calmness. He turned around and returned to his post. When he first came here, even if he took the interschool bus, it would take 7 or 8 minutes to reach the main teaching building. But today's Lu Feng is not the same as before. Today's Lu Feng's strength is terrifying. If he wants to, he can travel through space at any time. In that case, the entire Symbidium can be traversed by him in an instant. Although he did not travel through space, Lu Feng's speed is still very fast. If not for taking Yu Qingran to see the environment where he used to live, Lu Feng would have arrived at the destination in a few seconds. This time, Lu Feng spent nearly 10 minutes before finally arriving at the main teaching building. Looking at this familiar scene, Lu Feng gently smiled. He directly pulled Yu Qingran's arm and walked to the top floor. Before Lu Feng knocked on the door, Li Tianlai's office door opened. Lu Feng knows Li Tianlai's strength. Naturally, he will not show any surprise. In one step, he walked in. "Senior brother, I'm here." They did not speak too much because there is no need for useless pleasantries between them. Li Tianlai nodded with slight excitement. He turned around and took out a lot of precious drinks and placed them in front of Lu Feng. "Junior brother, you're finally here. If you didn't come, I'm afraid those old guys from the Federal University would nag me to death." Lu Feng knows who the old guys from the Federal University are referring to. They are the Federal University's ancient elders in the modern world. In terms of strength, they're at least at the level of gods. Of course, this modern world is hidden from the eyes of many Federal University students and ordinary people. These people's existences are incomparably terrifying. Of course, the most terrifying thing about them is not their strength, but their identity. Which one of these people didn't have countless disciples? Any one of them was now a famous figure in the world. Their strength was far from being measured by their own level. "Senior brother, I haven't seen you for more than a year. You've become much stronger." Lu Feng is not hypocritical. He is speaking from the bottom of his heart. In more than a year, he went from second-level demigod to pinnacle demigod. With such speed, even the Emperor of Massacre would not be able to match it. One had to know that Li Tianlai was a psychic, not a martial artist. Psychic cultivators are much slower in terms of cultivation. As for Li Tianlai's terrifying improvement, it was probably inseparable from his inheritance. Li Tianlai smiled helplessly. Lu Feng, you're slapping me in the face. Although my speed is not bad, compared to yours, it is far too slow. Aren't you making fun of me by saying that? Lu Feng smiled and did not continue to explain. He thought that between him and Li Tianlai, there is no need to explain anything. Indeed, Li Tianlai's speed was really quite a bit slower compared to him. The two of them sat down and began to chat. This is the reason why you challenged the Yuyo clan, right? Li Tianlai directed the topic to Yuyo Qingran. The real reason why Lu Feng challenged the Yuyo clan was spread widely after his victory against the Master of Six Dao. Many people already know that the reason why Lu Feng challenged the Yuyo clan and even fought the Master of Six Dao was because of a girl. And from the looks of it, Li Tianlai naturally guessed it. Lu Feng smiled and looked at Yuyo Qingran. That's right, senior brother. The reason why I challenged the Lu clan and Yuyo clan is because of her. Her name is Yuyo Qingran. Li Tianlai nodded and looked at Yuyo Qingran with a slightly strange expression. Of course, Lu Feng completely grasped the strange expression on her face. He quickly guessed the reason and smiled. Senior brother, actually, I came to find you because I have something to ask. Senior brother, do you know where Shuyan is? Hearing Lu Feng mention Mu Shuyan's name, Li Tianlai was slightly surprised. However, looking at Yuyo Qingran's incomparably calm expression, he completely understood that Yuyo Qingran knew about Mu Shuyan's existence. Soon, Li Tianlai came to a realization. He knew that he worried too much about this matter. With Lu Feng's existence, how could he not handle this small matter? Chapter 544. Li Tianlai also understood that it was normal for a world-shaking existence like Lu Feng to have several wives. Moreover, Lu Feng had done everything for Yuyo Qingran. Any girl would be so touched that they would be willing to do anything for him. Therefore, Yuyo Qingran's expression remained the same even after knowing about Mu Shuyan's existence. After a moment of silence, Li Tianlai said directly, Actually, ever since you disappeared, Mu Shuyan has not gone to the Federal University. It's not just her. Even Su Wenchao and Qi Yunqing are the same. However, Qi Yunqing was taken away by the two of them when he was studying at the Federal University. A hint of nervousness appeared on Lu Feng's face. Even they did not know where Mu Shuyan had gone. This made Lu Feng a little nervous. After returning, Lu Feng had contacted the Mu family. However, the Mu family had replied that they did not know where Yuyo Qingran had gone. Of course, Lu Feng had already guessed this. After all, Mu Shuyan and the Mu family were not on good terms. It was normal that they did not know. However, now that everyone did not know, Lu Feng was moved and anxious. When he saw Lu Feng's expression, Li Tianlai was silent for a moment. However, after a moment, he said, Actually, I have a guess as to where they went. They should have gone to look for you. They went to the foreign battlefield to look for you. Lu Feng was slightly stunned. Li Tianlai continued to explain. When Qi Yunqing disappeared, it was when the news of you starting the Battle of the Kings spread. Moreover, Qi Yunqing's reason for leaving was to gain experience. Based on their relationship with you and Su Wenchao's character, they should have left. I think that should be the case. At this moment, Lu Feng understood. There were many places that could block the Sky Network signal. However, the most obvious one was the foreign battlefield. The Outland battlefield was a completely independent space-time. In the Outland battlefield, the Heavenly Network was completely unusable. That was probably why Lu Feng couldn't contact them after he came out. Lu Feng, don't worry. This time, they must have informed some of their clans before heading to the battlefield in the Outlands. Although the Su family wasn't a first-rate aristocratic family, the Su family wasn't a first-rate one. However, their existence was not inferior to that of a first-rate family. The members of their clan must have had powerful experts accompanying them on their journey. After all, Su Wenchao's position in the Lu family is the same as yours. Both of you are their hope. The Su family will never allow anything to happen to Su Wenchao. Lu Feng nodded gently, but his heart was still filled with worry. If it was in the past, with the Su family's almighty following him, the foreign battlefield would not be a big deal. But now, this was the era of the War of the Kings. In this era of the War of the Kings, freakish geniuses ran amok. Many almighty monarchs had started to recover and become the guardians of these freakish geniuses. Therefore, in such an era, it was easy to die if one was not careful. Moreover, the foreign battlefield, because of Luo Yunyang, was where the Battle of the Monarchs would take place. There were more monstrous geniuses than ever before. It would be too dangerous there. There were so many non-humankind beings and so many independent forces. The existence of a humankind wasn't enough to protect everything. Therefore, Lu Feng was extremely anxious. In that case, senior brother, can you contact the Su family? I want to confirm this. After all, if they want to look for me, they definitely wouldn't be able to find me. Li Tianlai nodded gently. After opening the Sky Network and searching for some time, he finally found a way to contact an elder of the Su family. Without any hesitation, he dialed the Sky Network. The other side quickly picked up the call, and a three-dimensional shadow appeared in the void. Lu Feng knew that Li Tianlai had asked him to watch it so that he could know everything as soon as possible. Li Tianlai smiled faintly as he looked at the three-dimensional shadow. Elder Su Qing, long time no see. These were all pleasantries. Although Lu Feng often said such pleasantries, he really did not want to say such useless things now. Naturally, Li Tianlai could also see Lu Feng's anxiety. After greeting him, he went straight to the point. Elder Su Qing, I wonder if your young master Su Wenchao has gone to the foreign battlefield. It had to be said that Li Tianlai's question was rather direct. Su Qing was slightly taken aback. He really did not know why Li Tianlai had suddenly asked this. However, Su Qing did not answer directly. Instead, he asked, Teacher Li, I really don't know how to answer this sudden question. Su Wenchao's status in the Su family was the same as Lu Feng's. They had to protect Su Wenchao closely. Therefore, even if Li Tianlai came to ask, he would not say it directly. Li Tianlai knew that Lu Feng was really anxious. Therefore, he did not hesitate and explained everything directly. It's like this, Elder Su Qing. The person who asked this was not me, but the young master of the Lu family, Lu Feng. Su Qing was stunned for a moment. However, he quickly fell silent. Is it young master Lu Feng? Although Lu Feng's current reputation was still unknown to ordinary people, it was like thunder in the ears of the higher-ups. They naturally knew about the existence of the person who was known as the #1 person in the history of the Battle of the Kings. Moreover, as an elder of the Su family, Elder Su Qing also knew a little. That was, Lu Feng and their young master Su Wenchao were brothers who had an exceptionally good relationship. If it had been someone else who asked, Su Qing would not have answered. However, the person who asked this was Lu Feng, which made him hesitate. After a moment, he said, Teacher Li, please wait a moment. Let me see if the family head knows. I will help you ask first. After saying this, the Sky Network was cut off. In fact, Li Tianlai knew that this so-called inquiry was not to ask about Su Wenchao's current location. Instead, it was to ask the family head of the Su family to see if he should answer. In less than 3 minutes, the Sky Network was connected again. I'm sorry, Teacher Li. I did not know the young master's location before, so I specially asked. Li Tianlai and Lu Feng both knew that this was just an excuse. However, in order to protect their family's monstrous talent, such an inquiry was necessary, so they did not feel displeased. So, Elder Su Qing, have you asked now? Su Qing smiled faintly and nodded. I just asked the family head, and he told me that the young master is indeed in the foreign battlefield now. He seems to be looking for young master Lu Feng. Besides him, there's also young master Lu Feng's girlfriend, Mu Xian, his classmate, Qi Yunxing, the young masters of the Han and Zhao families, and the young master of the first-rate Lu family. At this moment, Lu Feng's hanging heart was slightly relieved. With so many young masters together, their safety should be guaranteed. Thank you, Elder. I wonder if you can inform me, elders who are accompanying you, that young Master Lu Feng has returned. Tell them that they don't have to search anymore. Elder Su Qing smiled and continued. Teacher Li, don't worry. A month ago, when young Master Lu Feng shocked the galaxy, we have already contacted the young master and the others through a secret method. They are very safe and have already begun to return from the foreign battlefield. They should be able to return in about a month's time. Hearing this, Lu Feng was completely relieved. Li Tianlai pondered for a moment and said directly, then informed them that when they return, they will go directly to the capital administrative planet. Young Master Lu Feng will be studying there for a period of time in the future. Su Qing naturally had no objections. After saying a few more words, he closed the Sky Network. Looking at Lu Feng's completely calm appearance, Li Tianlai smiled gently. You can rest assured now. Lu Feng also smiled and nodded. Okay, Lu Feng, you will set off with me in a while. Let's go directly to the capital administrative planet to see the teacher. The last time they went to the capital administrative planet, Lu Feng took Li Tianlai's personal spaceship. However, this time, it was the other way around. Although Li Tianlai's personal spaceship was also very fast, there was still a certain gap between it and the spaceship given to Lu Feng by the Lu family. After all, only the direct descendants of the Lu family and the true higher-ups of the Lu family were qualified to take the spaceship that Lu Feng took. The higher-ups here were the higher-ups of the Lu family. Only people who occupied a very important position in the human monarch's Lu family could take the spaceship. Therefore, regardless of whether it was speed or safety, this spaceship far surpassed Li Tianlai's personal spaceship. If they took Li Tianlai's personal spaceship, it would take at least 10 days. However, if they took Lu Feng's spaceship, it would only take 3 days. After all, Li Tianlai's spaceship was built exclusively for him. There was a big gap between it and a top-notch spaceship. Compared to Lu Feng's personal spaceship, it was even worse. 3 days later, the three of them appeared at the spaceship center of the capital administrative planet. This was the spaceship center of Paradise City. It was a very famous spaceship center in the entire Federation. Ordinary people did not have any special privileges here, but Li Tianlai was different. This was because this was Paradise City. It could be said that Paradise City was the city of the Federal University. As the disciple of Dao Songtian, Li Tianlai naturally had many privileges that others could not imagine. In fact, even without Li Tianlai's special privileges, Lu Feng could easily have an exclusive parking spot. After all, even the reception staff of the Cymbidium could tell that this was the Lu family's top-notch spaceship. Therefore, the staff of the spaceship center of a large city like Paradise City were naturally even more familiar with it. Therefore, when they saw Lu Feng's spaceship, the staff of the spaceship center had already made way for Lu Feng to park. Soon, Lu Feng's personal spaceship landed in the spaceship center of Paradise City. What greeted him was a grander scene than the one at the Cymbidium Spaceship Center. Unlike the Cymbidium, the staff of the Spaceship Center only knew that the Lu family was the #1 family in the Federation. However, they did not know how terrifying this #1 family was. After all, they were ordinary people and had limited contact with people of a certain level. However, unlike them, most of the people at the Spaceship Center of Paradise City knew about the level of martialists. They naturally knew what the Lu family represented. This was definitely not an ordinary aristocratic family. In the entire Federation, this was a peak power comparable to the Federation government. It was a terrifying existence that even the peak Overlord races in the universe did not dare to provoke. The direct descendants of the Lu family were extremely respected, especially after the recent series of big moves by the Lu family. Lu Feng's reputation had been pushed to an unusually high position. Therefore, these people were extremely respectful towards Lu Feng's arrival. Li Tianlai did not care much about this, because he knew that this was the treatment that the Lu family deserved. He turned his head to look at Lu Feng with a relaxed smile. Junior brother, it seems like I will have to follow you wherever I go in the future. I'm afraid that I can only enjoy this kind of treatment when I'm with you. When he heard this, Lu Feng smiled slightly. Senior brother, I believe that you will be able to take that step very soon. As long as you become a divine master, you will still be a respected existence in the entire universe. even among the peak Overlord races. Chapter 545. There was nothing wrong with what Lu Feng said. The existence of God spirits was an extremely noble existence in the universe. A God-tier master was equivalent to a true god. Therefore, as long as Li Tianlai's identity was exposed, he would be able to enjoy the most noble treatment in any race, unless he was from a race that had an absolute hatred for the human race. Li Tianlai laughed, but didn't deny anything, because he knew that what Lu Feng said was completely correct. All right, junior brother, come with me to see teacher first. I've already informed him before we came. I think he's waiting for us in his office now. As for other things, we'll talk about them after you meet teacher. Lu Feng nodded slightly and followed Li Tianlai closely. Lu Feng and the others followed the familiar path and soon arrived at the Federal University's headquarters. As far as the eye could see, it was still the familiar sparring arena. This was a characteristic of the Federal University. It was absolutely impossible to see these things in other schools. There were still a few days before the start of the semester. So many students had already arrived. Most of them had already started fighting in the ring to verify their achievements during the holiday. When he saw Lu Feng's slightly absent-minded expression, Li Tianlai chuckled and asked, "What are you thinking about, junior brother?" Lu Feng hesitated for a moment before he said, "Senior brother, I'm thinking that if I didn't go to the Mu family to play, then perhaps I would be like these students right now, competing and learning from each other." Li Tianlai was slightly stunned. After a moment of silence, he said, "Who can say for sure? Who could have predicted what happened back then? After all, this was fate's arrangement. We are powerless to resist fate." Lu Feng chuckled and didn't say anything else. Other people's futures could be predicted. As long as they entered an unimaginable realm, they could use supreme secret techniques and countless resources to temporarily enter the long river of time and see a person's fate. However, these were all others. He, Lu Feng, was different from others. From the moment he set foot on the path, he had completely shattered the shackles of fate. There were no longer any shackles of fate in his life. Therefore, Lu Feng was the most special existence in the world. In the endless space-time, except for the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors who had already been annihilated, except for the legendary Shakyamuni Buddha who had created the era of Buddhist civilization, and except for the current human king, there was no one else who could compare to Lu Feng. Perhaps, fate is something that no one can predict. Hearing Lu Feng's words, Li Tianlai was slightly taken aback, but he quickly smiled. He knew that Lu Feng had his own ideas. The thoughts of such taboo kings were unimaginable to ordinary people. Soon, the hover car arrived at the main building. Lu Feng and the other 2 got out of the car one by one. Lu Feng recognized the towering building in front of him. Li Tianlai had already told him about its history. Seeing that Lu Feng was still slightly absent-minded, Li Tianlai smiled again. He also looked at the towering building. "Once upon a time, I was like you. Every time I came here, I would be shocked by it. However, as the number of times I came here increased, and as I have been a teacher here for decades, this feeling has gradually faded. However, its existence is indeed great. What it has witnessed is the bloody and illustrious years of the human race, the unremitting rise of the human race, and the supreme proof of the path of psyche masters." This was the divine brilliance in front of him. The divine brilliance was the highest artifact that the divine brilliance heavenly emperor had condensed. Legend had it that it had entered the peak of grade 11. A grade 11 artifact. In fact, the divine brilliance heavenly emperor's true power of power had already entered the realm of life and death quasi-emperor. Combined with this divine brilliance, his power of power is absolutely unparalleled in the world. It's a pity that he faced countless opponents. He had to fight against countless opponents. It's sad and lamentable that a peerless heavenly emperor, the greatest existence in the history of psyche masters who was closest to the true eternal divine emperor, fell in the endless collisions just like that. The life of the divine brilliance heavenly emperor was the life of a supreme legend. He was even more revered and praised than the other two celestial emperors. Lu Feng nodded gently. Actually, junior brother, you will definitely be such a person in the future. The future hope of the human race rests on your body. You are the Taboo King. The Taboo King is a supreme existence that can reach the level of the human king. Your greatness is the only one in all of history. I firmly believe that in the future, you will definitely surpass the divine brilliance, heavenly emperor, and reach the level of your ancestor, the human king. Li Tianlai had witnessed Lu Feng's rise time and time again. He had witnessed Lu Feng's crazy extreme battles time and time again. He had always had unimaginable confidence in Lu Feng. He firmly believed that Lu Feng's future would definitely be unparalleled glory and splendor. Nothing could compare to it. Lu Feng smiled gently, but didn't say anything else. His goal might have been to surpass the human king in the past. However, from the moment he stepped onto this path, he had already changed completely. Lu Feng's current goal was to surpass himself. He no longer regarded the human king as his goal. My future? Actually, my future has always been the name of my cultivation technique. My future has always been supremacy. The few of them walked straight up. Lu Feng wanted to meet his teacher, Dao Songtian. Lu Feng was full of respect for Dao Songtian. After all, this was the first teacher he had acknowledged. This was a great teacher who had truly helped him countless times. It could be said that the reason Lu Feng had been able to reach where he was today was inseparable from Dao Songtian. In Lu Feng's heart, Dao Songtian's position was unshakable. Meeting Dao Songtian this time was something that Lu Feng had wanted to do for a long time. After all, so many accidents had happened in the past. During this time, he had never contacted Dao Songtian. This was undoubtedly very unfair to Dao Songtian, who was always concerned about Lu Feng's teacher. Lu Feng, teacher Dao Songtian has been very concerned about you ever since you disappeared and appeared in the foreign battlefields. It could be said that he has already used all the resources that he can use. This time, you should really thank teacher properly. Lu Feng nodded his head gently. Although he didn't say anything, he understood everything in his heart. Vaguely, Lu Feng thought of the illusionary emperor from the Federal University that he saw outside the Great Wilderness Totem Palace. He still remembered everything that the illusionary emperor said. Lu Feng knew that Li Tianlai wasn't saying anything good about Dao Songtian. It was because Dao Songtian had really helped him in this way. All right, when you meet teacher later, if teacher has something to say, don't hide it. Although I know that you have a lot of secrets, teacher isn't that kind of person. But I'm not that kind of person. If you really have some secrets that you can't tell me, I won't ask you. Lu Feng smiled gently. Although there are some things that I really can't tell teacher. However, there are many other things that I can say clearly. Teacher is good to me, I know, I understand. I understand. Therefore, if it doesn't involve too much, I will tell teacher everything. Li Tianlai could hear the meaning behind the last 6 words. He smiled. It was a happy and relieved smile. All right, let's go in. Teacher already knows that we are here. Dao Songtian was an illusionary emperor. It would be easy for an illusionary emperor to monitor a super life-sustaining planet. Given how much he valued Lu Feng, Dao Songtian would have already known when Lu Feng had just arrived at the capital administrative planet. Slowly, the door to the room opened. Lu Feng finally saw his teacher. In one step, he was already in front of Dao Songtian's table. Lu Feng smiled when he saw this young, but very kind figure. It was a genuine smile. In an instant, he actually half-knelt in front of Dao Songtian. Teacher, I am back. Teacher, I'm back. I'm finally alive again. I'm back by your side. Even in front of the great ancestor of the Lu clan, Lu Feng only bowed. However, in front of Dao Songtian, Lu Feng half-knelt respectfully. This undoubtedly showed Lu Feng's feelings for him. One had to know that Lu Feng would only kneel in front of his parents. Dao Songtian's face flashed with excitement when he saw Lu Feng's excited figure. Of course, it was just a fleeting expression. However, everyone saw it. Even Lu Feng saw it clearly. In the next moment, Dao Songtian waved his arm and lifted Lu Feng up. "Child, you are finally back, child." In Dao Songtian's eyes, Lu Feng was a child. Lu Feng gently, heavily, and deeply nodded. Lu Feng and Dao Songtian stayed for nearly 4 hours. During this time, Yuyo and Qing Ran left together with Li Tianlai. She knew that what Lu Feng wanted the most right now was to be alone with Dao Songtian. Therefore, she wisely chose to leave. During these 4 hours, Lu Feng didn't ask anything about cultivation. Between him and Dao Songtian, it was basically Lu Feng talking and Dao Songtian listening. Lu Feng didn't hide anything about the King of Chaos from Dao Songtian. When Dao Songtian heard this, he was extremely shocked. After all, he also knew that the Divine King of Chaos had fought a decisive battle with the peerless Divine King of the foreign race. However, he never expected that the peerless Divine King of the foreign race would actually be his martial Dao incarnation. The Divine King of Chaos's martial Dao incarnation wasn't the Chain of Chaos, but the King of Chaos, his martial Dao incarnation in human form. Chapter 546. No wonder the Chaos Divine King's martial Dao incarnation was so weak. Like the Yellow Springs Divine King, he relied on his martial Dao incarnation to enter the Divine King Supreme realm. His martial Dao incarnation, the Chain of Chaos, was actually so much weaker than the Yellow Springs Monument. So, the Divine King of Chaos' true martial Dao incarnation was actually the King of Chaos. I have to say that the Divine King of Chaos is really the most powerful Supreme Realm Supreme in the history of the human race apart from the Human King, the First Divine King, and the Emperor Divine King. Dao Songtian's exclamation was reasonable, because the Divine King of Chaos only relied on the Chain of Chaos, which didn't show any martial Dao incarnation, to suppress the heavenly Dao race's Overlord of Time to the point that he couldn't even raise his head. One could imagine that if the King of Chaos appeared, the Divine King of Chaos at that time might even have the matchless power to kill the heavenly Dao race's Overlord of Time. However, this King of Chaos was actually able to betray his master. This is really incomparably shocking. I just don't know who that existence that awakened the King of Chaos is. As the principal of the Federal University, as the pinnacle figure of the entire human race, Dao Songtian knew a lot of things that others didn't know. Since the rise of the human race, it has always been filled with endless schemes. Although the Divine King Supreme Realm's ultimate evil curse has always existed, the human race was the race that suffered the most. A long time ago, the Divine King of the human race had already sensed the existence of the conspiracy. But who would have thought that this conspiracy would be able to plot against so many peerless divine kings? Dao Songtian sighed slightly. Although he had already entered the Void Emperor realm, he was still powerless when it came to these matters. After all, according to the rumors, even the primogenitor human king didn't escape from this curse. Actually, teacher, traces of my primogenitor human king have appeared before. That was in a battlefield in the outer realm. That battlefield is the battlefield of an epic. In this battlefield, there was once an existence wearing the Divine King's battle armor that attacked our primogenitor human king. Although I don't know what the final outcome was, the sniping he received was real. After I returned this time, the Liu family's ancestor seemed to have appeared. He's deciphering the restrictions of the Outworld battlefield and is preparing to personally enter the Outworld battlefield to investigate the truth. Dao Songtian nodded gently. The progenitor of the Liu family was a supreme existence of the heretical path. Apart from the fact that he was unable to suppress destiny, he was actually not much different from the Divine King in this era, where the Divine King had met a tragic end. If it's the first ancestor of the Liu family, then we might be able to find some clues. However, the deepest truth is very, very difficult. One had to know that countless divine kings had perished. When they had been alive, they had suppressed destiny and possessed unlimited power. Even so, They had not been able to find out the slightest bit of the truth. Now that they were only supreme existences of the heretical path, it was even more impossible. After all, the power of a supreme power of the heretical path was only equivalent to a first-level divine, king, mythological domain existence. Lu Feng nodded gently. He had thought of this as well. Even so, after receiving news of the primogenitor human king, many members of the Lu family could not help but want to go and check it out. Next, Lu Feng told Dao Songtian a lot about his own experiences. Although Dao Songtian understood most of the things he said, Lu Feng did not know much about them. However, Dao Songtian was still very happy to hear this. After all of this was real. It had all come from Lu Feng's mouth. In the end, Lu Feng talked about everything that had happened in the Great Wilderness Totem. Dao Songtian had no way of knowing everything that had happened. After all, only Lu Feng and the 31st Prince had truly experienced everything. Furthermore, the 31st Prince had not reached the end. Therefore, no one else knew about everything that had happened. One had to know that the existence of the Great Wilderness Totem was a peerless and terrifying pinnacle grade, 12 weapon that could directly face the great calamity of the universe. After Lu Feng spoke about everything without holding anything back, Dao Songtian was also endlessly shocked. The existence of a grade, 12 weapon, and the terrifying sacred monument that could cause the universe to be buried with it were definitely things that would shock the universe. Of course, among these countless shocking things, there were two things that really shocked Dao Songtian the most. Dao Songtian was filled with endless shock as he looked at Lu Feng. There was a kind of unconcealable fear in his eyes. You said that you have already jumped off the path. When he had first arrived, Dao Songtian had already sensed Lu Feng's strangeness. As a person who had entered the Dao, logically speaking, he should have been able to easily sense Lu Feng's aura. After all, that had been the case in the past. However, this time, he could not sense it at all. Previously, he had guessed that the ancestors of the Lu family had used heaven-defying means to conceal Lu Feng's aura as a person who had entered the Dao in order to protect Lu Feng. After all, an alien supremacy was also a supreme-level existence. They were omnipotent, so they should be able to do this as well. However, Dao Songtian had never imagined that Lu Feng's aura had not been concealed. Instead, he had simply jumped off the path. Lu Feng, what do you want to say? Throughout the countless epochs since ancient times, apart from the primordial immortal demon era, there have only been a handful of people who have truly walked out of the path. Apart from those mythical existences, who else could have done it? Even the overlords of the epochs could not have done it. But you actually did it. You actually did it when you just stepped onto the path. You should know that even the ancestors of the human monarchs only surpassed it after perfecting the path. However, you completed it so much earlier. I never imagined that my youngest disciple would actually be the first person since ancient times. You are the first person that even the human monarchs cannot compare to. Lu Feng felt a little embarrassed when he heard these praises. He only smiled faintly and did not say anything else. After a while, Dao Songtian fell silent, as if he was thinking about something. After a while, he finally opened his mouth slowly. Lu Feng, if you hadn't said it, I would never have believed that there was actually an ultimate immortal technique that surpassed the 3 ultimate immortal techniques in the current universe. An immortal technique that can annihilate an entire universe is worthy of its ultimate name. It is worthy of being a terrifying existence that can bury an entire universe with it. 1 billion mortal worlds, 1 billion immortals. I really want to see its most powerful moment one day. I want to see its most glorious magnificence. What a telekinesis master hoped to see the most was a powerful telekinesis master and the most terrifying immortal technique. There is no doubt that the 1 billion mortal worlds, 1 billion immortals, was an existence that surpassed everything else in Dao Songtian's heart. Lu Feng felt slightly apologetic. I'm sorry, teacher. The current me is simply unable to unleash this invincible power. Furthermore, this immortal technique exists in my mind. I simply can't say it out loud. Dao Songtian waved his hand gently. Only those who are fated will know about the divine object of the universe. Since even the divine king couldn't succeed, only you could. This proves that in the current universe, only you are the most suitable one. You are the one who is truly destined to be with me. Lu Feng fell silent. In fact, this attitude was undoubtedly a tacit agreement. Indeed, there was one more thing he hadn't told Dao Songtian. That was, only he could unleash the 1 billion mortal world's 1 billion immortals. Even if he completely recorded the true technique, no one would be able to unleash it. Even a supreme ruler, like the primogenitor human monarch, would not be able to do so. This was because the true existence of the 1 billion mortal worlds and 1 billion immortals should be the 1 billion mortal worlds and 1 billion immortals. The 1 billion mortal worlds was a realm, while the 1 billion immortals was on another level. However, the 1 billion mortal worlds and 1 billion immortals needed to be unleashed at the same time in order to truly unleash its power. If it was unleashed individually, its power would be reduced by more than 10 times. In other words, the only person in the universe who could truly unleash the 1 billion mortal worlds and 1 billion immortals was an existence with 2 souls. However, it was a pity that having 2 souls was a supreme ability, and only the taboo monarch could possess such a supreme ability. Lu Feng was the only taboo monarch who possessed the supreme ability of 2 souls in the current era, or even in the endless eras. Therefore, the 1 billion mortal worlds and 1 billion immortals was destined to be Lu Feng's invincible immortal technique. It was the ultimate immortal technique. Of course, Lu Feng didn't say this out loud. This was because it would seem like an excuse if he said it out loud. All right, Lu Feng, do you have any plans for the future? This was what Dao Songtian was most concerned about. The speed of your advancement is really too fast. Although your cultivation has been consolidated, you haven't improved enough in other aspects. You have to know that things like knowledge are more useful in the future. You have only cultivated for such a short period of time, yet your strength has increased so much. In this case, your knowledge simply can't keep up with your cultivation. In fact, even without Dao Songtian explaining it, Lu Feng already knew about this. Hearing this, Lu Feng already understood Dao Songtian's plan. Of course, Lu Feng had the same idea as Dao Songtian. He smiled and said directly, "Teacher, I actually have the same idea. Therefore, in the future, I hope to stay in the university to study. This way, I can completely consolidate all the things I lack." Dao Songtian smiled and nodded gently. Lu Feng's current cultivation had reached the true, strongest realm of the younger generation. The current Lu Feng's battle strength below the true God realm was enough to be invincible in the current era. Therefore, he didn't need to frantically improve his cultivation. Moreover, he had already jumped out of the path, so he wasn't afraid of being found by immortal kings. Therefore, compared to continuing to improve his cultivation and making his foundation unstable, consolidating his knowledge was the most important thing right now. Let Tianlai accompany you to report. In this case, starting from the next semester, you can follow and learn for a period of time. When I am free, I will impart knowledge to you alone. Lu Feng had no objections to Dao Songtian's arrangement, although classes were simply a waste of time for him. However, there were only a few days of classes in a week, so he could afford to waste time. Moreover, Lu Feng also wanted to relax. He also wanted to experience a peaceful life without constant danger and countless pursuits. Okay, teacher, then I will have to trouble teacher for this period of time. Dao Songtian smiled and didn't say anything. When he walked out of the door, the person who appeared in front of Lu Feng was Li Tianlai. When Lu Feng left, Dao Songtian had already notified Li Tianlai. "Junior brother, teacher has already told me. I will bring you to the academic affairs office in a moment to report. At the same time, I will arrange your class." This was something that Lu Feng had to do. If he went alone, it would be very troublesome. However, with Li Tianlai, it would be much more convenient. After all, Li Tianlai had been a teacher in the main school for a long time. In addition to his identity as Dao Songtian's disciple, it would be very easy to get everything done. Lu Feng smiled gently. Thank you, senior brother. After we are done, I will treat senior brother to a good meal. Consider it as fulfilling our agreement. Chapter 547. Once upon a time, Lu Feng and Li Tianlai had an agreement that Lu Feng would treat Li Tianlai to a meal. However, the agreement was to be held on the Cymbidium. Unfortunately, Lu Feng did not fulfill his promise due to some reasons. This time, it was to make up for their previous agreement. Li Tianlai smiled gently. All right then. Although it is not on the Cymbidium, I have nothing to be picky about. After all, who can easily eat at an emperor's banquet? Although Lu Feng was far from reaching the realm of great success, his status in the current era was still incomparably honorable. To be honest, he was on an equal footing with the Divine King. After all, the evildoers of the new era were definitely on the same level as the Divine King. A taboo king like Lu Feng was in existence one level higher than the Divine King. His existence was incomparably terrifying. The future supreme, the Divine King, was nothing difficult for him. According to those records, as long as Lu Feng did not fall, he would be within reach of the Overlord of the new era. Therefore, although his current strength was not comparable to the Divine King, he would surpass the supreme existence of the universe in the future. It was naturally an incomparable honor to be treated by such an honorable existence. Of course, Lu Feng knew that Li Tianlai was only joking. Although Lu Feng was an emperor, this emperor was not the kind of emperor in the mortal world who commanded the world. His emperor was the emperor of the universe. Lu Feng was still the same Lu Feng to his family and friends. Senior brother, you must be joking. No matter when, as long as you think of it, just let me know. Lu Feng, will definitely not dare to disobey you. The two laughed and did not say anything else. The Academic Affairs Office was located in the middle of this huge building. In the headquarters, there were about 300,000 people at each level. The total number of students in the Federal University had reached a terrifying number of 1.2 million. Although this number seemed to be a lot, when it was averaged out across the entire human race, it was very little. After all, the human population was more than 1 trillion. In the past, Li Tianlai worked in the Academic Affairs Office, so he was familiar with the place. Soon, they arrived at the office of the Academic Affairs Office. At this moment, there were still a few days before the start of the school term, so the teachers of the Academic Affairs Office had basically all arrived. When Li Tianlai casually pushed open the door and walked in, many people were slightly stunned. After all, most of the people who came here first had to ask for instructions. There were very few people who came in directly like Li Tianlai. However, when they saw that the person who came was Li Tianlai, they all reacted. Bursts of laughter could be heard continuously. Lu Feng could tell that these people had a good relationship with Li Tianlai. Although these expressions were a little exaggerated and overly flattering and happy, the feelings in them were not fake. Seeing these people running around Li Tianlai, Lu Feng was slightly stunned. However, he quickly reacted. With his current experience, Lu Feng naturally understood everything. Although Li Tianlai was only a teacher, his status was incomparably honorable. He was a peak demigod. This was enough to make anyone have to look up to him. Furthermore, Li Tianlai was Dao Songtian's teacher. Who was Dao Songtian? He was the headmaster of the Federal University. He was a person who held the highest authority in the Federal University. In addition, Dao Songtian was the Void Emperor. Everyone had to treat him with the utmost respect. As for his disciple, these people naturally had to curry favor with him. After greeting these people with a smile, Li Tianlai finally pushed Lu Feng over and walked into the office of the Director of Political Education. He looked at the Director of Political Education in front of him and said directly, "Director Zhang, this is my junior brother. He was specially recruited a year ago. However, due to some reasons, he was absent for a year. Today, he is finally back. Therefore, I hope that you can make the proper arrangements." Director Zhang looked at Lu Feng with slight astonishment. If an ordinary student was absent for a year, even if he was a specially recruited student, it would be impossible for him to be recruited by the main institute. After all, the main institute was not like the other institutes. Those who could enter the Federal University were all true geniuses. Although the specially recruited students were all geniuses among geniuses, the Federal University never lacked geniuses. If it was late, it was late. If it was missed, it was missed. The Federal University had never violated the rules for a mere genius. Of course, if it was a monstrous genius, it would be a different story. However, Lu Feng was clearly not included in any of them. The reason why Director Zhang was shocked was not because Lu Feng was late for a year, but because of Li Tianlai's words. He called Lu Feng his junior brother. There was probably no one in the political education department who did not know who Li Tianlai's teacher was. If Li Tianlai called him his junior brother, then he must be that person's disciple. Such an identity was incomparably honorable. Incomparably honorable. Looking at Lu Feng, Director Zhang's face was brimming with incomparable enthusiasm. He extended his hand and gestured for Lu Feng to sit down. "This student, please sit down." As he spoke, 2 chairs were brought over and placed behind Lu Feng and Li Tianlai. Lu Feng did not have any reservations and sat down directly. "May I know your name? Let me check the file first before assigning you a specific position." Director Zhang had already opened the Sky Network and pulled up the file. Lu Feng smiled gently and said, "Director Zhang, my name is Lu Feng." Director Zhang nodded gently. He did not turn his head from looking at the file. However, after a moment, he seemed to stiffen. Director Zhang turned his head with difficulty to look at Lu Feng. He asked with a hint of suspicion, "You are Lu Feng?" Lu Feng only smiled when he heard Director Zhang's slightly hoarse tone. "Yes, Director Zhang. I am Lu Feng." Director Zhang was silent for a moment before looking at Lu Feng again. "Are you the supreme existence in the recent rumors, Emperor Lu Feng?" There were trillions of people in the Federation, and Lu Feng's name was not that special. Director Zhang had been able to guess that Lu Feng was the Emperor, not because he was amazing, but because his brain was good. Being able to be accompanied by Li Tianlai, personally, being able to become Dao Songtian's disciple, and being called Lu Feng, any one of these 3 conditions was not that shocking. However, when these 3 conditions appeared on the same person at the same time, things were not that simple anymore. At that moment, the image of Lu Feng appeared in Director Zhang's mind. It was the Emperor Lu Feng. Lu Feng was not a pretentious person. If he came here, his identity would be known by others sooner or later. Moreover, Lu Feng had no intention of hiding his identity. He smiled faintly and nodded. "I am Lu Feng from the Lu family. I am the Emperor Lu Feng." Lu Feng had never been afraid to admit anything. He had never been overly hypocritical. He was the Emperor Lu Feng. The Emperor would never be hypocritical, as there was no existence worth being hypocritical about. Director Zhang took a deep breath as his whole body trembled slightly. He was not afraid, but excited. He was the director of the Federal University's General Hospital and a terrifying 3rd-stage demigod. He naturally knew about Lu Feng. Although he did not know much about the legend of Lu Feng, he still knew a little about him. It was because of this that he couldn't face Lu Feng calmly. "Lu Feng, student Lu Feng, I never thought that you would be the one reporting." Director Zhang's face was flushed red. If it was Lu Feng, not to mention being absent for a year, even if he was late or deliberately absent for a year or even 100 years, as long as he came back, the Federal University would welcome him warmly. After all, he was the publicly recognized #1 person among the younger generation. Director Zhang did not know what the Taboo King was, nor had he heard of any legends about it. However, he knew that Lu Feng was the publicly recognized #1 monster in the world. If such a person could come to the Federal University, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. After a moment of excitement, Director Zhang finally calmed down. He took a few deep breaths and finally turned his attention to the information. In just a few seconds, he found Lu Feng's file among the millions of files. Director Zhang took out Lu Feng's file and looked at it. Lu Feng, you should be a first-year special enrollment student. However, you are late by a year. This means that when you enter the university, you can be a first-year student or a second-year student. I don't know. What do you plan to do? Logically speaking, Lu Feng should be a first-year student. After all, he was absent for a year, so that year's classes could be considered behind. This was the general hospital. The courses of the general hospital could not be compared to those of the other branches. Being absent for a year was definitely not easy to make up for. However, Lu Feng's identity was too special. With Lu Feng's identity, strength, and knowledge, even if he graduated now, no one would say anything, let alone a year of classes. Because Lu Feng had such strength. Before coming, Lu Feng had already thought about it, so he said without hesitation, "Then, put me in the second-year class." According to the class I assigned at the beginning, just directly assign me. When he was first assigned to the class, he was in the same class as Mu Shuyan and Su Wenchao. Lu Feng was also happy to be in the same class as them. Director Zhang nodded lightly. He just did everything casually, and everything was already done. All right, I have already made the arrangements for you. When school starts in 4 days, directly enter the second-year, specially recruited psychic class to study. I will explain it to the teacher in charge of the class later. Now, do you have any questions, Lu Feng? Lu Feng thought for a moment and found that there were no more questions, so he shook his head lightly. Then, I will have to trouble you again, Director Zhang. Lu Feng stood up with a smile and said to Director Zhang. At this moment, Director Zhang was not sitting in his original seat. When Lu Feng stood up, he also stood up. He personally walked Lu Feng out of the door. When Lu Feng's figure completely disappeared from sight, Director Zhang finally let out a long sigh of relief. Looking at Lu Feng's disappearing figure, a strange smile appeared on Director Zhang's face. He slowly muttered to himself, "There is still more than a month before the tri-campus tournament. I really want to see the excitement in the eyes of those opponents when they know that they're going to face the number one person of the younger generation." Chapter 548. Walking out of the school building, Lu Feng saw Yu Qingran at a glance. Yu Qingran also saw Lu Feng at a glance. After a joyful smile, he went directly to Lu Feng's side. "Is everything done, Lu Feng?" Lu Feng nodded gently and pulled Yu Qingran's arm without hesitation. "Qingran, I will be studying here for a while. Why don't I ask the teacher to help you get in as well?" To become a student of the Federal University, the conditions were undoubtedly harsh to the extreme. However, this was nothing compared to what Lu Feng said. Not to mention that he was just an ordinary student. Even if he was a specially recruited student, it was nothing. After all, Lu Feng, was worth it. But hearing this, Yu Qingran shook her head gently. "Lu Feng, I've been happy enough these days. I want to wait for you to start school before returning to the Lu family." Hearing this, Lu Feng froze for a moment. A moment later, a slightly anxious expression appeared on his face. "Qingran, why do you want to leave?" Seeing Lu Feng's anxious expression, Yu Qingran smiled with satisfaction. She playfully wrinkled her nose. "Actually, I can't learn anything here. When I left, the Lu family's ancestor said that when I returned, he would personally guide me and help me enter the God Spirit realm as soon as possible." Hearing this, Lu Feng was silent for a moment. He knew Yu Qingran's choice was not wrong. With the Lu family's ancestors' personal guidance and the unlimited resources of the Lu family, Yu Qingran could indeed enter the God Spirit realm in the shortest time possible. However, Lu Feng was a bit reluctant. Yu Qingran naturally understood Lu Feng's thoughts. She thought of the Lu family's ancestors' words before she left. Although she was also reluctant, she still said in the end, "Lu Feng, there's still a long way to go. I also want to stay young forever. I want to be with you all the time. And if I want to do that, I must become a god. If it was here, it would take me a long, long time to do it. If that's the case, I might as well return to the Lu family and break through as soon as possible with the help of the ancestors. Only in this way can I break through as quickly as possible. It won't be a burden to you, and it won't affect me." Silence. Endless silence. Finally, Lu Feng nodded. "Then if you've really decided, so be it. I knew that this was the best choice." I respect your choice. With a light smile, Yu held Lu Feng's arm and pulled Lu Feng out. The three of them left the Federal University and found a hotel. They didn't choose the biggest or most luxurious one, but the closest one. Whether it was Yu Qingran, Lu Feng, or Li Tianlai, they didn't care where they ate. What they cared about was who they were with. The meal was quickly finished. Naturally, Lu Feng was the one who paid. This time, before leaving, Lu Feng carefully inquired about the specific functions of the payment card. It turned out that it was a VIP card jointly issued by the top banks of the Federation. There was no money in it because it meant that it could be used for unlimited payments. No matter how much money it was, as long as it was used, it could be used to pay. After paying, Li Tianlai wisely didn't stay with Lu Feng. Instead, he left. It was getting closer and closer to the start of the school term. As the principal, Li Tianlai naturally had to hurry back to the Cymbidium to preside over everything. Naturally, there was no one left to disturb Lu Feng and Yu Qingran. In the following 3 days, Lu Feng and Yu Qingran played all over the Paradise City. Of course, if they wanted to play all over the city, 3 days wouldn't be enough. Even if they spent 3 months, they would only be able to see it once. After all, the Paradise City was too big. However, in these 3 days, the two played to their heart's content. Because he knew that Yu Qingran was about to leave, Lu Feng also put down everything and wholeheartedly accompanied Yu Qingran to go crazy and play with her. Finally, 3 days passed quickly. In the center of the spaceship, Lu Feng watched Yu Qingran board the Lu family's top-grade spaceship and leave here. Originally, Lu Feng wanted to personally send Yu Qingran back to the Lu family. Unfortunately, Yu Qingran refused. Her reason was that Lu Feng couldn't delay the start of the school term. However, under Lu Feng's countless urging, Yu Qingran finally agreed to Lu Feng's request to take the Lu family's top-grade spaceship. Even so, Lu Feng still had a lot of worries. However, compared to letting Yu and Qingran take a spaceship alone, taking the Lu family's top-grade spaceship would make Lu Feng feel a little more at ease. After all, the Lu family's top-grade spaceship was very safe. After watching Yu and Qingran leave, Lu Feng let out a sigh of relief. Today was the start of the school term. Lu Feng still had to go back and prepare well. The school gave him a standalone, luxurious dormitory. Of course, this was not specially prepared because of Lu Feng's identity. After all, Lu Feng had said before that he didn't need any special treatment. According to Director Zhang, this standalone, luxurious dormitory was for all special admission students. After knowing this, Lu Feng didn't say anything. The opening ceremony was in the afternoon. After sending Yu Qingran off in the morning, Lu Feng first went to the dormitory to familiarize himself with it. Then, he went to the city center again. This time, Lu Feng planned to buy a hover car. With Lu Feng's current strength, his speed was countless times faster than the best hover car. After all, he now had the strength of a god who could travel through space. However, Lu Feng couldn't travel through space all the time in the school. Moreover, it was not suitable for him to rely on his warrior physique to go in and out. In addition, Lu Feng didn't lack money now, so he planned to buy a hover car to satisfy his small wish. When Lu Fenglai arrived at the largest hover car market in Paradise City, it was only around 10 o'clock in the morning. There were still 4 hours before the opening ceremony started at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. 4 hours was enough for Lu Feng to choose a hover car he liked. Now that Lu Feng had enough money, he didn't want to choose some low-level hover cars. Because now Lu Feng didn't need to deliberately hide anything. He also didn't have any special hobby of pretending to be low-key. Therefore, Lu Feng directly went to the 9th floor of the hover car center, which was the top floor. "Hello, sir. Would you like to see or buy a hover car?" On the top floor, there were some real aristocratic hover cars. The price of one here was no less than 10 million Federation coins. Most people who came here were mostly here to feast their eyes. And in this case, the hover car center didn't stop them. In fact, it was very welcoming. They would provide all kinds of snacks and drinks for every visitor. Of course, there were no waiters. After all, The number of people who came here to watch every day was very large. If there were waiters for every visitor, the hover car center wouldn't be too busy. But even so, their way of doing things was still very much appreciated by Lu Feng. He knew that the hover car center also treated those who came to watch with such good treatment. It wasn't because they were kind. Businessmen pursued profits. This was the nature of all businessmen. What they did was nothing more than a means of marketing and promotion. Although these people wouldn't buy it, it was hard to guarantee that the people around them wouldn't buy it. The people who left this place would definitely tell the people around them what they had seen. And those who heard it, if they were interested, more than 90% of their first choice would be this place. The value that a hover car could earn was definitely incomparably terrifying, and the snacks and drinks they provided were really nothing. So, as long as they could rely on these visitors to sell even one hover car, they would make a huge profit. Looking at the beautiful waitress in front of him, Lu Feng said, "I plan to buy it directly. Can you introduce it to me?" Hearing that Lu Feng didn't want to take a look and wanted to buy it directly, the waitress's eyes lit up slightly. If she could sell one, the commission she could get would be absolutely terrifying. This meant that even though she might not be able to sell a single hover car in a few months or even a year, this ninth floor sales center was still the most desirable place for all customers. If she didn't have enough money, she probably wouldn't have such an opportunity. Looking at Lu Feng, the beautiful waitress's smile became even more eye-catching. She said to Lu Feng, "Yes, sir. Please follow me." Turning around, she directly led Lu Feng to the center. "Sir, what type of hover car do you want and what price? We have a complete range of hover cars here, and they're basically all in stock. There's no need to wait. And the prices range from 10 million to the top 1 billion Federation dollars. While speaking, the waitress had already led Lu Feng to a place where sport hover cars were concentrated. It had to be said that those who could become waitresses on the 9th floor were all extremely intelligent. When she saw that Lu Feng was a young man, she directly led him to the place where sports hover cars were concentrated. After all, most young people like sport hovers. Lu Feng looked at these hover cars and nodded lightly. "I need sports hovers. I wonder what the prices here are." Hearing Lu Feng's words, the beautiful waitress smiled slightly. "It's like this, sir. Our hover cars include almost all of the famous hover car series in the Federation. Although some of them aren't on display here, we basically have them in our warehouse." Speaking of this, the beautiful waitress's face was filled with pride. After all, there were only a few companies in the entire Federation that had this kind of ability. Lu Feng smiled lightly. He was somewhat impressed by the background of this hover car sales center. This kind of ability was definitely not something that an ordinary company could possess. "In that case, can you introduce me to a few models that are faster and more comfortable?" What Lu Feng needed was speed and comfort. As for safety, that wasn't within his scope of consideration at all. Right now, even if a planet were to collapse, as long as Lu Feng entered an extreme state, it wouldn't be able to kill him. Therefore, for Lu Feng Lai, even if a huge car accident happened, he wouldn't be harmed in the slightest. Chapter 549. The beautiful attendant's eyes lit up slightly, and she nodded lightly. Lu Feng's request undoubtedly proved one point. That was, what Lu Feng wanted to buy this time must be the real Aristocrat series. After all, Lu Feng did not have any strange expression after hearing the price, and directly stated his request. Following behind the beautiful attendant, Lu Feng and the attendant quickly came to a separate exhibition hall. "Sir, all the sports suspension cars here are the top series. The only ones that can meet your requirements are these top-notch suspension cars." Lu Feng nodded lightly, did not care about the beautiful attendant beside him, and walked on his own. Logically speaking, an existence like Lu Feng should not care about the enjoyment of mortals like suspension cars, but he was different. The time it took for Lu Feng to go from an ordinary person to an almost invincible existence in a younger generation was just over a year. Such a time, such a speed, was undoubtedly frightening. Although he had wasted 10 years in the realm of time, and the realm of time, he had spent those 10 years cultivating. He had spent those 10 years in Shun Yuan's sea of consciousness. Therefore, he did not have any life experience during this time. In other words, until now, Lu Feng had only experienced life for more than a year after entering the path of a warrior. His temperament was still the same as before, the ordinary Lu Feng temperament. Moreover, since young, Lu Feng had been unusually fond of suspension cars and other mechanical existences. Otherwise, he would not have chosen to be a mechanical psychic. Therefore, now that he had the conditions, Lu Feng did not mind buying the most luxurious suspension car to satisfy himself. Looking at the 30 silent suspension cars in the separate exhibition hall, Lu Feng's eyes revealed a strange emotion. Finally, when Lu Feng walked to the side of a suspension car, he stopped completely. After looking at so many suspension cars, Lu Feng was not very satisfied, but only this one caught Lu Feng's eye at a glance. Because from this two-suspension car, Lu Feng seemed to see a similar temperament to himself. This was a kind of king of cars, a kind of supreme feeling in cars. Without any hesitation, Lu Feng directly said to the beautiful attendant, "This is the one." The beautiful attendant was slightly stunned. She had never seen a buyer like Lu Feng, who did not even ask about the price and performance, and directly bought it. If it were not for Lu Feng's strange temperament, the beautiful attendant would have suspected that Lu Feng was here to amuse her. After a moment, she had completely recovered. With an expression of unconcealable excitement hanging at the corner of her mouth, the beautiful attendant still followed the rules and introduced to Lu Feng. "Sir, this is the top suspension car series created by the Federal Luxury Goods Company Long Yasi Group, a sports suspension car in the Royal Family series. The name of this two-suspension car is Emperor, which matches its name. It is the top existence of the Royal Series. In the entire Federation, the number of Emperors is definitely not more than 100, and it is also the only one in our Paradise City Sales Center." Lu Feng nodded his head gently. Looking at this suspension car, Lu Feng liked it more and more. This liking was not only because of its temperament, but also because of its temperament. That was its name, Emperor. Lu Feng was the Emperor, the supreme lord of all existence. And this Emperor was the top existence of the Royal Series, and also the top existence of the sports suspension cars of the Federation. It could be said that only this kind of suspension car was worthy of Lu Feng's status. Looking at Lu Feng's undisguised expression, the beautiful waitress's expression became even more excited. She could see that Lu Feng liked this suspension car from the bottom of his heart. And if she could sell this suspension car, just the commission alone would be enough to cover her salary for more than 10 years. But in the end, the attendant took a deep breath, a trace of worry flashing across her eyes, because she had not said the price yet. She was really afraid that Lu Feng would give up in the end after hearing the price. In that case, her commission would fly away. "Sir, although this Emperor is the top of the sports suspension car category, its price is also not cheap. Because of various restrictions, the sales price is different from place to place. And in our heavenly city, this is the only Emperor's car. Its price may be slightly higher than the price listed on the Sky Network." Speaking up to this point, the beautiful waitress even stretched out two of her fingers and lightly pinched them, indicating how little this little bit was. Seeing her slightly playful expression, Lu Feng smiled. Lu Feng had been reluctant to part with Yu, but now that the Emperor had appeared, and because of the beautiful waitress's witty appearance, Lu Feng let go. "Okay, just tell me the price. I don't care how much it is, I want it." Lu Feng's words were considered to have given her reassurance. At this moment, the attendant finally relaxed and stuck out her tongue, looking incomparably cute. Seeing this, Lu Feng just smiled and shook his head. He really did not know how a girl like this could become a salesperson. "Sir, the Emperor's price is 21 billion Federation dollars. Of course, according to the authority given to me by the company, if you want it now and pay directly, then the price can be lowered to 2 billion. This is already my greatest authority." After saying this, the beautiful waitress looked at Lu Feng with watery eyes. Her heartbeat was about to jump to her throat. Although Lu Feng said that he would buy it no matter what, the price was too scary. However, after she said the price and looked at Lu Feng's expression for a few seconds, she finally sighed deeply. She realized that after she told Lu Feng the price, Lu Feng's expression did not change at all, not even the slightest bit of trembling. This was an extremely calm color. It was as if there was no difference between the price of 2,012 yuan. Okay, just pay the bill. Help me put it downstairs. I'll just drive it away. This time, the beautiful waitress was sure of it. She knew that Lu Feng would definitely buy it. Okay, sir, please wait a moment. As she spoke, the attendant had already opened her own Sky Network account. In this society, it was very difficult to impersonate a company's account. At the very least, only the top people on the Sky Network could do this. Such people would not bother to do such a thing. Therefore, when he saw the beautiful waitress pull up Tian Luo's company account, Lu Feng did not have any doubts. He directly connected his payment card to it and instantly transferred 2 billion yuan. 2 billion. For an ordinary person, they would not be able to earn this much even if they did not eat or drink for 10,000 years. However, Lu Feng had casually used it in an instant. Of course, this was nothing to Lu Feng. With his current existence, not to mention 2 billion, even 12 trillion was just a casual number. He really did not care about this. Back in the foreign battlefields, the price of those divine items had easily been in the hundreds of trillions. The exchange rate between divine item points and Federation dollars was 1 to 10,000. In fact, this exchange rate was even higher. Basically, 30,000 to 40,000 Federation dollars might not even be enough to exchange for one divine item point. 2 billion was only equivalent to 120,000 divine item points. This 120,000 was really not even considered a drizzle to Lu Feng. After completing the payment, the beautiful waitress let out a deep breath. Her appearance made Lu Feng feel even more amused. Of course, that was all. Lu Feng would not fall in love with just anyone. The beautiful waitress contacted the Heavenly Network. A few seconds later, the few of them walked out and headed towards the Emperor's car. Lu Feng knew that these people were probably the delivery crew. Lu Feng turned around and was about to leave. However, as he took a step forward, he suddenly thought of something. He turned around and looked at the beautiful waitress again. Lu Feng smiled gently and said, "Do you want to earn money again?" Hearing this, the attendant did not look as excited as Lu Feng had imagined. At that moment, her gaze suddenly became a little strange. Lu Feng even saw a trace of disgust in it. In the blink of an eye, her fiery mood had completely changed and turned into an extremely cold expression. She looked at Lu Feng and said coldly, "I'm sorry, sir. This money is enough. I don't want to do anything else. Also, although I'm just a sales attendant, I have my own dignity. No matter how much money I have, I won't sell myself." She said this resolutely, and Lu Feng could see her determination. However, Lu Feng was confused by her words. However, after a short while, Lu Feng completely understood. Suddenly, his face was filled with a strange expression. Looking up and down at the beautiful attendant, Lu Feng's expression became more and more strange. Although this beautiful waitress was indeed very beautiful, the degree of her beauty was not extreme enough to make Lu Feng lose his composure. Compared to Lu Feng's two confidants, Yu Qingran and Mu Shuyan, she was definitely inferior. With the two of them, Lu Feng did not have any other thoughts about other people. Seeing Lu Feng's expression, the attendant's expression became even more disgusted. She quietly clenched her fist, but after a while, she finally relaxed. She looked at Lu Feng with an even deeper disgust. Finally, she stopped looking and turned to leave. Although he did not care about the opinions of ordinary people, Lu Feng was definitely not strange enough to accept other people's misunderstandings. The next moment, he opened his mouth and called out to the attendant, "I think you misunderstood. Although you are very beautiful, you are not enough to make me lose my composure to the point of being shameless." Hearing Lu Feng's words, the attendant's fists clenched tightly again. She did not look back. Lu Feng smiled faintly and said indifferently, "I just want to buy a suspension car for my sister and let you continue to be my attendant. As for other thoughts, I really have no interest in them. The attendant turned around and frowned slightly. She quietly looked into Lu Feng's eyes until Lu Feng burst out laughing. Finally, she blushed and lowered her head in embarrassment. Sorry, sir. I am really sorry. I misunderstood. I am really sorry. She hurriedly apologized a few times, and even her face was thoroughly red. Seeing the attendant's appearance, Lu Feng did not blame her at all. Lu Feng did not care much about these people. Lu Feng also admired the attendant's character. Society was full of materialistic desires. For some material enjoyment, they could sell their souls and races, let alone their bodies. In comparison, although this beautiful waitress was very rude, Lu Feng still appreciated her appearance. Forget it, but do you still want to earn this money? Chapter 550. Lu Feng tilted his head slightly and looked at the beautiful waitress with a joking tone. Upon hearing Lu Feng's words, the beautiful waitress lifted her head abruptly and looked at Lu Feng with hopeful eyes. Yes, of course I do. I'm sorry, it was a misunderstanding. Please forgive me. Looking at the beautiful waitress's pitiful appearance, Lu Feng smiled and gently shook his head. Okay, I forgive you. Now, take me to have a look. I don't have much time left. The beautiful waitress nodded her head firmly. Then, he came to Lu Feng's side again. In that case, sir, what type of suspension car does your sister want? Lu Feng was silent for a moment. This car was bought by him for Lulu. Lu Feng knew that Lulu would be very dissatisfied with him if he left her alone in the Federation. This time, if he bought a car and didn't buy one for her, he was afraid that she would be a little angry. However, Lu Feng really didn't know what type of man Lulu liked. After pondering for a moment, he slowly opened his mouth and said, I'm not sure either. However, my younger sister is more gentle and quiet, and occasionally a little weird. Her heart is very kind, but she also feels a bit like Sang Tsang. Because she has experienced too many things, she has suffered too much pain. Speaking of Lulu, Lulu's image constantly appeared in Lu Feng's mind. At this moment, Lu Feng also began to talk about her. No matter what difficulties she faced them bravely. Nothing could erase the kindness in her heart. Just like that, Lu Feng just wanted to casually describe Lulu's character, but by the time he finished, a full 10 minutes had passed. Looking at the slightly strange expression of the beautiful waitress beside him, Lu Feng smiled awkwardly. Sorry, I made a fool of myself. This time, the beautiful waitress didn't smile at all. She just shook her head gently. Sir, I really envy your sister. She has a brother who loves her so much. For you to be able to describe everything about her in such a complete manner, there is no doubt that you really love your sister very much. She is truly blessed. Lu Feng's awkward smile finally stopped. This time, he let out a deep sigh. Actually, I don't love her. Because of us, she suffered too much. I just want to make it up to her. The atmosphere was heavy. Finally, after a few seconds, the beautiful waitress broke the silence and awkwardness. Sir, based on your description, I suggest you buy a crystal car for her. This type of hover car is specially developed for girls. It's hard on the outside and can't be destroyed. After experiencing all the precipitation and friction, after experiencing countless tribulations and baptisms, in his heart, he had always maintained that kind of clear and pure white. This series of events seems to have been prepared for your sister. When she said the word crystal, Lu Feng had already made his decision. Just as the beautiful waitress said, Lulu was really a crystal-like girl. Since that's the case, why don't you bring me to take a look at the crystal suspension car? I think this car is really suitable for her. Looking at the beautiful attendant beside him, Lu Feng chuckled and said, Previously, I thought that you weren't a professional suspension car sales attendant, but after hearing what you said just now, I feel that I was wrong. Many of the actions the waitress did were things that professional car salespeople wouldn't do. However, after hearing about Lulu's character, her analysis of her words showed her professional level, which made Lu Feng feel that he had made a mistake. However, upon hearing this, the beautiful waitress blushed slightly. Sir, you're right. I'm not a professional car salesperson. I'm only working part-time here. Lu Feng was slightly taken aback. After a moment, he smiled and said nothing. They've arrived at the Crystal Car Sales Center. Lu Feng nodded lightly as he looked at the hovering cars in front of him. The Crystal series, just as the beautiful waitress said, was really designed for Lulu. The temperament of the cars was very similar to Lulu's personality. It was the same feeling he had when he first saw the Emperor. Lu Feng glanced around and finally found a suspension car that he was satisfied with. After a few steps, Lu Feng had already reached the side of the hover car. This is it. This time he didn't ask for the price. But the waitress didn't care. She could see that Lu Feng didn't care about money at all. Nodding with a smile, the beautiful waitress said, "Sir, I'm not trying to flatter you, but your eyesight is really too good." It was the same for the previous royal family series, and it's the same now. You can always identify the most noble and valuable existences at a glance. Previously, in the Royal Family Sales Exhibition Hall, all the Royal Family series were placed separately. It really looked like there was no order or obvious prominent position. But Lu Feng chose the Emperor at first glance. If the first time was an accident, then this time, it was Lu Feng's strength that caused it. Because Lu Feng had once again chosen the best suspension car in the Crystal series. This Crystal Heart is the essence of the Crystal series. It can be said to be the best suspension car in the world. Whether it's safety, comfort, or speed, it's one of the best in the Federation. Of course, its price is in line with its status. But I think that with your wealth, you wouldn't care about these things, right? After saying this, the beautiful waitress playfully stuck out her tongue again. Lu Feng could see that she wasn't that professional. There was no need for her to pretend. Plus, after the misunderstanding and Lu Feng's description of his sister, she had a good impression of Lu Feng, so she didn't pretend in front of Lu Feng. The price of this car isn't as high as the royal family car you just bought, but it's one of the best. It costs 530 million Federation dollars. I can save you 10 million. Plus, you bought the royal family car before, so you can save some money. In that case, 510 million should be enough. Lu Feng nodded and took out his payment card. He had already completed a transaction before. This time, it was a walk in the park for him. Therefore, the beautiful waitress quickly completed the transaction. "So, sir, what do you plan to do with this car?" Lu Feng thought for a bit. He was in a bit of a dilemma, because he didn't know where to send it. After all, Lu Feng didn't know which class Lulu was in. After hesitating for a bit, Lu Feng told the waitress the address of his villa at the Federal University. After hearing Lu Feng's address, the beautiful waitress's eyes slightly froze. A strange look appeared on her face. But this look disappeared in a flash. Lu Feng was thinking about Lulu's position at the moment, so he didn't see the strange look in the waitress's eyes. When he looked up, the waitress had completely returned to normal. "Okay, that's fine. You could just send it over. I have something to do in the afternoon, so I'll leave first. Let's meet again in the future." While speaking, Lu Feng gently waved his arm at the beautiful waitress, turned around, and left. Looking at Lu Feng's departing figure, a strange look flashed across the eyes of the beautiful waitress. But soon, she thought of something and suddenly let out a slightly excited voice. "Damn, I was so focused on making money that I forgot about the opening ceremony. Unlucky, unlucky, really unlucky. But who is this handsome guy? There aren't many people in the university who are as generous, as handsome, and as elegant as him. Those famous people seem to be different from him. Who is he?" While thinking, the waitress has already started running downstairs. The commission from these two hover cars was enough for her to become a rich woman. Hence, she gave up on this part-time job. Forget it. Anyway, as long as he's a student of the university, I'll definitely meet him in the future. It takes about an hour to get from the car sales center to the Federal University's main campus. But by the time Lu Feng left the sales center, it was already past 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Fortunately, the Emperor hover car he bought was powerful enough to allow him to travel a distance that would normally take an hour and a half for a normal hover car to travel in less than 30 minutes. On this road, it was not completely unimpeded. During this period, there were many sections where the speed limit was. Therefore, it was a miracle to be able to complete the entire journey in just half an hour. By the time Lu Feng entered the Federal University's main campus, it was already 1:50. With Lu Feng's driving skills, 10 minutes was enough for him to reach the main campus building. After quickly parking the car, Lu Feng directly entered the main campus building. There were less than 3 minutes left before the start of the opening ceremony. At this time, Lu Feng didn't care about continuing to hide anything. At this moment, he fully utilized his cultivation base. He didn't even use the staircase, directly going up the stairs to the 99th floor. When Lu Feng pushed open the door, many eyes focused on him. This was the opening ceremony of the main campus. Usually, those who wanted to participate would arrive early. There was almost no one who arrived at the last minute like Lu Feng. Therefore, Lu Feng's appearance attracted almost everyone's attention. Of course, if it were anyone else, it would be very difficult for them to accept the attention of millions of people. However, in this situation, Lu Feng didn't have much of a reaction. This was because he had faced the attention of billions of people before, and those people were at least warriors. Let alone millions of ordinary people. Even millions of gods wouldn't make him the slightest bit concerned. There was no excessive clamor. Lu Feng simply found a seat nearby and sat down. At this moment, he finally began to size up the teachers on the podium. Among them, the deans of the 4 grades, the dean of the academic affairs office, and various special teachers all appeared. However, among them, only Dao Songtian was missing. In fact, Lu Feng could have guessed this situation. What kind of existence was Dao Songtian? He was already a terrifying powerhouse who belonged to the Almighty King realm. Now that he had stepped into the Void Emperor realm, he could be called a peerless almighty. Although such an existence was the principle of the Federal University, he wouldn't appear in such an occasion. If one wanted to see Dao Songtian appear, it would be under some special circumstances or directly through the video information on the Federal University's homepage on the Sky Network. Chapter 551. On the rostrum, several teachers who didn't know Lu Feng's identity frowned slightly. They really didn't like students like Lu Feng. Although the rules said that the ceremony would start at 2 o'clock, all the students arrived at around 1:30. Only Lu Feng appeared in the last few minutes. This undoubtedly showed that Lu Feng didn't take the ceremony seriously at all. He didn't take the teachers and directors seriously at all. If it weren't for the fact that the ceremony was about to start, several teachers would have come over to reprimand Lu Feng. Of course, Director Zhang of the Department of Political Education didn't have such thoughts. He just looked at the school leaders around him with a strange expression. Director Zhang understood that even if he appeared in the middle of the meeting or even directly messed up the ceremony, no one would dare to say anything, let alone arrive at the last minute. After all, the significance of Lu Feng was too terrifying. It could be said that Lu Feng's appearance was already a great blessing. Moreover, these school leaders who were dissatisfied with Lu Feng were all terrifying demigods. Perhaps their strength was enough to shake the world, but compared to Lu Feng, compared to the 18-year-old boy in front of them, they were still far behind. The gap was too big. Director Zhang believed that if there was a real confrontation, Lu Feng would only need one move to completely annihilate everyone on the rostrum at this moment, except for the vice principal. Finally, as 2 o'clock came, the ceremony started smoothly. Although Lu Feng's appearance was a small flaw, no one cared about it, because the start of term ceremony was very important. For 2 whole hours, the teachers, directors, vice principals, and so on took turns to speak. Although they didn't say much, there were too many people, so by the time they finished speaking, 2 whole hours had passed. The rest of the time was mainly for some directors to introduce the school's purpose and constitution. After everything was said, 3 whole hours had passed. Finally, everything was done, and the ceremony was completely over. At this time, it was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Lu Feng was the person closest to the main entrance. When it was over, Lu Feng was naturally the first to leave. On the rostrum, looking at Lu Feng's back as he left first, the director finally frowned slightly. Although his voice wasn't loud, the surrounding directors could clearly hear him. This student is a bit too much. This kind of behavior is simply disrespectful to the elders. Hearing this, the few department heads nodded slightly. They were all directors of the Federal University. In the entire Human Federation, they were all extremely respected. Although they weren't very strong, they couldn't go against the terrifying reputation of the Federal University. No matter where they went, even if it was a divine spirit expert, they wouldn't be too arrogant when they saw them. But now, Lu Feng didn't give them any face at all, which made them feel very dissatisfied. Unfortunately, when Director Zhang heard these people's voices of agreement, he only laughed. At this moment, everyone's eyes focused on him. Director Zhang, do you have any objections? Director Zhang was the director of the Department of Political Education. Among the directors, he had the most power. Although these people were very dissatisfied with Director Zhang's sudden smile, they couldn't say anything. After all, Director Zhang's power was greater than theirs. Director Zhang looked at these people and shook his head slightly. He really wanted to see these people who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth clash with Lu Feng and be ruthlessly slapped in the face by Lu Feng. However, he also understood that this would be very bad for him. Therefore, he could only remind them now. I don't have any objections. Anyway, this student isn't late. After all, we set the time to start at 2 o'clock. He's not late. That's enough. Hearing this, the few directors frowned slightly. They looked at each other and saw the slightly strange look in each other's eyes. Director Zhang was the director of the Department of Political Education. His personality had always been unusually strict. He usually hated this kind of student the most. But now, he took the initiative to say such words. There had to be something strange going on. Director Zhang looked at these people's expressions and shook his head with a smile. He continued, "Besides, I'm not sure if you'll be able to do anything. Moreover, you probably don't know his identity. If you knew, I'm afraid you wouldn't say such words." Identity? They looked at each other and vaguely seemed to understand something. To be able to make this Director Zhang say such words, then it proved that the identity of the student just now was probably abnormally honorable. Otherwise, this director, who is usually incomparably strict, wouldn't say such words. However, although there were more than 1 million students who had an unusually noble identity, there were very few who could make Director Zhang say such words. As for those few students, they all knew about them. Obviously, they were very unfamiliar with Lu Feng and the others. Director Zhang didn't hide anything. He said directly, "That student just now is the principal's youngest disciple. He's a descendant of the Lu family. His name is Lu Feng." At this moment, everyone's expression was filled with shock. They looked at each other and finally took a deep breath. Emperor Lu Feng. As directors of the Federal University, they naturally vaguely knew about Lu Feng's situation. The identity of Dao Songtian's youngest disciple was already very noble, but just this alone made them afraid at most. However, the name of Emperor Lu Feng didn't make them afraid. It made them feel terrified. After all, the name of the emperor represented not only supreme status, but also terrifying power. It was a power that could easily destroy them. Lu Feng's existence was simply too frightening. It was simply too frightening. They knew that even if they were the principal, they still wouldn't be able to compare with that young man in terms of status, let alone just a few directors. Because he was too noble. He actually came to our school. After leaving the main teaching building, Lu Feng went directly to the side of his hover car. Just like that, Lu Feng drove his hover car away under everyone's watchful eyes and ran towards his dormitory. Many people who saw Lu Feng leave took a deep breath. Most of these people were rich people. They naturally recognized Lu Feng's car. It's actually an emperor. That student just now is from some big tycoon or some aristocratic family. I didn't expect that such a person was hidden in our school. This is really inconceivable. Looks like there will be a lot to see in the future. If this student is really just rich but not powerful, then it won't be long before he's unlucky. I remember that the little tyrant in his 3rd year used an emperor. Given his personality, how could he allow others to drive the same hover car as him? Lu Feng couldn't hear these people's discussions. He had already driven a long distance away. If Lu Feng didn't deliberately listen, these voices wouldn't reach his ears. Besides, even if Lu Feng knew, what could he do? Lu Feng didn't care about this at all. After all, there was basically no one in the younger generation that he cared about. In just 3 minutes, Lu Feng had returned to his dormitory. Besides the Emperor's speed, he was able to travel so fast because the road was unobstructed. All the students had entered the auditorium to attend the opening ceremony. Lu Feng was the first to leave, so he was the only one driving on campus at the moment. As a result, Lu Feng was completely unobstructed. When Lu Fenglai arrived at his villa, a hover car was parked quietly in front of his door. It was the Crystal Heart, the hover car Lu Feng had ordered previously. When he had attended the opening ceremony, the hover car had already been delivered. When he saw the hover car, Lu Feng thought of Lulu. After thinking for a bit, Lu Feng decided to check on Lulu's whereabouts first. The opening ceremony would be held in the afternoon, and the opening dinner would be held in the evening. The location of the dinner would be in the plaza. There was no doubt that this was a gathering of millions of people. Not to mention what they were eating. Just this lively scene was enough to make anyone feel relaxed and happy. Lu Feng wanted to find Lulu at night. Otherwise, she would definitely throw a tantrum if she found out that he hadn't visited her in 3 days. As he thought about Lulu, Lu Feng's lips curled into a warm smile. After opening the Sky Network, Lu Feng immediately found Director Zhang's contact information. Director Zhang had insisted on giving it to him when he had left the Department of Political Education. Previously, Lu Feng had thought that he wouldn't be able to use it. He hadn't expected that he would actually need it in just a few days. After a few rings, the call was picked up. Director Zhang's voice came from the other end. "Student Lu Feng, is there anything you need from me?" If it had been anyone else, the initiator would definitely have spoken first. However, when it came to Lu Feng, Director Zhang beat him to it. This was because he knew the gap between him and Lu Feng. Lu Feng smiled gently. He looked at Director Zhang's image on the Sky Network and said directly, "Director Zhang, there is indeed something I need to trouble you with this time." Director Zhang was still smiling. He nodded gently and said directly, "What is it? As long as it's something I can do, it definitely won't be a problem." Without any hesitation, Lu Feng said, "It's like this, Director. I have a cousin who is also studying in the General Hospital. Her name is Lulu. I wonder if you can help me look into it." Lulu's real name was Lulu. Her previous surname had been abandoned when her mother passed away. Now, she was a member of the Lu family. Director Zhang nodded his head gently. As he spoke, he had already opened the freshman's database. Soon, he pulled out 3 files related to Lulu. He sent all 3 files to Lu Feng. "Student Lu Feng, these 3 people are all called Lulu. Take a look and see which one is the one you are looking for." Lu Feng nodded gently and focused on looking at the photos. With just a glance, Lu Feng saw Lulu's existence. With a smile, he began to look through Lulu's file. Of course, these files were fake. What Lu Feng really wanted to see was Lulu's class. The specially recruited class of the first-year Psyche faculty. Chapter 552. Lu Feng nodded his head gently. Given Lulu's aptitude, it wouldn't be a problem for her to enter the Federal University's General Hospital. However, it would be difficult for her to become a specially enrolled student. However, considering that she had been arranged by the Lu family, being a specially enrolled student wasn't a big deal. "I've already found her. Thank you, Director Zhang." Director Zhang was undoubtedly very happy to be able to establish a good relationship with Lu Feng. Plus, Lu Feng had asked for his help with such a trivial matter. "It's nothing, Student Lu Feng. If you need anything in the future, just contact me directly." Lu Feng smiled and nodded his head. After exchanging a few pleasantries with Director Zhang, he turned off the Sky Network. As he stood in front of the door, Lu Feng once again sank into deep thought. In the end, Lu Feng still walked into the villa. He had thought about it before. If he went to look for Lulu now, he might not be able to find her. If it was nighttime, perhaps he could give her a surprise. As he thought about this, Lu Feng smiled faintly. When he returned to the dormitory, Lu Feng tidied up his clothes a little. At his current level, he shouldn't care too much about his appearance. However, Lu Feng was still an 18-year-old young man. Sometimes, he still wished that he could be a little more tidy. As he looked at himself in the mirror, Lu Feng smiled in satisfaction. Lu Tao and Yin Shenwei's genes were already good enough. Therefore, although Lu Feng's looks weren't the best in the Federation, he was still considered very outstanding. Plus, because of his cultivation, Lu Feng had the elegance of a telekinesis master and the dominance of a martialist. The combination of these two qualities gave him a unique temperament. It's a pity that I've already jumped off the path. Otherwise, if the aura of a Tao-accessing entity still existed, I would really be able to charm a lot of people. Lu Feng shook his head gently. He was just joking with himself. It had been 2 months since Lu Feng returned to the human race. During the time he spent with Yu and Qing Ran, Lu Feng gradually regained his natural instincts. Lu Feng had gradually concealed the terrifying killing intent that belonged to the foreign battlefield. The consequence of this was that Lu Feng was becoming more and more like an ordinary young man. Looking at the time on the Sky Network, it was already 6:30 p.m. The banquet would start at 7 o'clock. It would take 20 minutes to get to the square from here if one were to take the hover bus. Of course, with the Emperor by his side, 5 minutes would be enough. It was just that Lu Feng didn't want to be too ostentatious in front of everyone, so he ultimately chose to take the inter-school bus. After leaving the villa, it took them 3 minutes to arrive at the location where the hover car would pass by. 5 minutes later, a hover car finally stopped beside Lu Feng. Lu Feng didn't hesitate. He got on the car and headed to the campus square. The campus square was a campus square built by the Federal University General Hospital. It was considered one of the more famous squares in the Human Federation. The scale of the square was extremely terrifying. It was almost half the size of a third-grade city. Therefore, it wasn't a big deal for millions or even tens of millions of people to eat together, let alone millions of people. By the time Lu Fenglai arrived, the square was already packed with people. This time, there was no such thing as being late. After all, this banquet wasn't compulsory. The banquet was divided into classes. Lu Feng's class was a second-year Psyche faculty special recruit class. Unfortunately, Lu Feng didn't recognize anyone in the class. Su Wenchao and Mu Shuiyan both went to the Outland battlefield to find him. Therefore, Lu Feng didn't have much interest in his class. To be honest, he was somewhat interested in Lulu's class. Moreover, Lu Feng's main purpose of attending the banquet today was Lulu. In the next moment, Lu Feng had already walked into the square. Looking at the vast crowd, Lu Feng was somewhat speechless. He knew Lulu's class, but he couldn't find where it was. After hesitating for a moment, Lu Feng decided to ask someone first. The people here were basically all students. Although this banquet was for teachers and students, there were very few teachers who actually came here. Basically, except for those who had just graduated and became teachers, the others didn't come. Of course, those few directors would also appear. This represented the school's attitude. As he walked quietly in the crowd and looked at the happy expressions on their faces, Lu Feng's heart felt slightly strange. Although many of the people here were much older than him, Lu Feng still felt that he was looking down on them with the attitude of an elder. Lu Feng smiled bitterly. He knew that in just a few days, his attitude wouldn't change completely. Although he had only been away from the ordinary circle for a year, he had experienced too much during this time. Even if there were many virtual king existences who had lived together for thousands of years, they still couldn't compare to Lu Feng. Therefore, after more than a year of tempering, Lu Feng's heart had become incomparably weathered. Sigh, I really don't look like a teenager. Perhaps many people envied Lu Feng's current strength, but Lu Feng really didn't want all this. If he could, he would rather be an ordinary teenager and live an ordinary life with his family every day. No matter what, I have already jumped out of the shackles of fate. No one can control my future. Since I have already embarked on this path, I can't give up, because I am the Emperor Lu Feng. At this moment, a dazzling light appeared in Lu Feng's eyes. In his heart, his willpower was still incomparably firm. Looking at the passing crowd, Lu Feng finally stopped someone who was about the same age as him. "This student, I have some questions to ask." When he heard that Lu Feng had something to ask, the student stopped decisively. The Federal University had a special characteristic, which was unity, incomparable unity. Of course, there might be a lot of people in this circle who didn't fit in, but overall, the Federal University was widely recognized as the most united university. Regardless of whether they were in school or out of school, as long as a student needed help, they would do their best to help. This was the Federal University's mission and tradition. This time, there was a student in the school who needed help, so the student naturally stopped. "What's the matter? Ask away." When he heard this, Lu Feng smiled gently. He was incomparably amiable. "It's like this. I want to ask where the specially recruited class for first-year psyche faculty is located." When he heard this, the student smiled gently. He didn't tell Lu Feng directly. Instead, he opened the Sky Network. The location of the gathering this time is all on the Sky Network. You didn't pay attention to the school's Sky Network homepage before, right? Lu Feng was slightly taken aback when he heard this, but he still nodded his head. The Sky Network was currently just a communication tool for Lu Feng. He really hadn't used it in other aspects. Now that he heard this classmate mention it, Lu Feng realized something. "Indeed, I'm sorry. I'll download it immediately." The student shook his head gently. "I'm afraid there isn't any now. How about this? Open the Sky Network, and I'll send you a map." Lu Feng nodded his head gently and opened his own Sky Network. In an instant, the two of them were connected. The next moment, Lu Feng received an invitation. It was an invitation to the Heavenly Network. Without hesitation, he accepted it. In less than a second, the transmission of the message was completed. Lu Feng didn't look at it immediately. Instead, he thanked the student. After that person left, Lu Feng opened his own Sky Network and started looking for the location of the first-year Psyche faculty. Even though Lu Feng had the cultivation of a Psyche master, he was slightly speechless when he saw the instructions on the map. Apart from a specially recruited class for a warrior and a Psyche master, the number of other classes in a grade department was also very frightening. Basically, regardless of whether it was the first-year or second-year classes, there were a shocking number of classes. If it weren't for the existence of this map, Lu Feng would have to spend a lot of time looking for it himself. Following the guidance of the map on the Sky Network, Lu Feng finally arrived at the indicated location after searching for a long time. Looking at the 500 people in front of him, Lu Feng had a slightly strange expression in his heart. Of course, it wasn't because of the large number of people there. After all, the specially recruited class for first-year Psyche Masters represented the best of all the Psyche Masters in the Year 1 Psyche faculty. There were probably only 100 or so people who were still in the same place. The rest of the people were probably there to make connections. What really made Lu Feng's expression strange was an outstanding figure among the 500 people. She stood there quietly without saying a word. However, her every move seemed to be the center of attention. Just a casual walk would attract countless gazes. It could be said that among the 500 pairs of eyes, at least 400 pairs were focused on her. This was a kind of charm. It was a charm that no one could ignore or describe. She was none other than Lulu. Lu Feng smiled. This smile came from the bottom of his heart and was filled with a kind of familial warmth. At the moment, Lu Feng's domineering and sharp aura had faded away. He had become more amiable. A few girls who passed by Lu Feng couldn't help but take a few glances at Lu Feng. After all, whether it was in terms of appearance or temperament, Lu Feng belonged to the peak of the younger generation. It was natural for him to be able to attract the attention of girls. Back when he was not a monster and was just an ordinary person, Lu Feng was already an influential figure in the school. Now that he had completely transformed, no matter where he went, he was undoubtedly the center of attention. Without hesitation, Lu Feng walked slowly towards that figure. Lulu was smiling faintly. In front of her, the boys were trying their best to show off their humorous demeanor by constantly talking to Lulu. When they saw Lulu smile, they couldn't help but become excited and work harder. Unfortunately, These people didn't understand how helpless Lulu was at the moment. She hadn't been very willing to come here in the first place. If it hadn't been for the invitation of her roommates, Lulu wouldn't have joined this troublesome dinner party. Initially, she planned to quietly muddle through the crowd, but who would have thought that no matter where she went, there would never be less people around her. Even when she returned to her class, there were still hundreds of people coming over with various reasons and excuses. Lulu, it seems that you have to go out more in the future. This way, I can benefit a lot. Chapter 553. An unusually sweet-looking girl was holding something in her hand, looking at Lulu happily as she spoke somewhat wittily. The things in her hands were all gifts from other people to Lulu or to her directly, hoping to strike up a conversation with Lulu. Of course, the girl who spoke was from the same dorm as Lulu. Otherwise, she wouldn't have spoken so casually. Lulu could easily tell that she was joking. She looked helplessly at the excited boy who just left and said speechlessly, "Xiaofei, can't you stop making fun of me? Can't you see that I'm so annoyed right now?" Her face was full of annoyance. The girl called Xiaofei smiled slyly. "Lulu, you're treated like a dream of any girl. You know, ever since you came to school, the so-called 10 goddesses of the school have been overshadowed." Hearing this, Lulu rolled her eyes slightly. "Don't talk about me. What 10 goddesses of the school? The real geniuses didn't study in the school. Although they're in the school, they keep a low profile. The so-called top 10 goddesses are just girls who like to show off everywhere. Let's not talk about the distant ones. Even shouting is much prettier than them." Hearing this, Xiaofei did not refute. She gently nodded her head. "That's true, but the 10 of them do look pretty good. Unfortunately, compared to you, the gap is not small. But to be honest, Xiao Ting liked to be independent too much. With her appearance, she could just casually wave her hand and countless boys would flock to her. Does she have to work so hard?" Although there was a slight complaint in her tone, Xiaofei's eyes were also filled with a faint admiration. In this materialistic society, there were very few girls like Xiao Ting who could not be immersed in worldly affairs. "All right, Lulu, what kind of boy are you looking for? From the looks of it, you don't seem to be very interested in these boys. You know, our Federal University has gathered the most outstanding young people in the Federation. Of course, the top ones are all hidden by the big families. Don't even think about it. There are very few of them. I'm afraid there are only a few dozen suitable for you. Why don't you consider the boys here? After all, they're already at the peak. They're not bad at all." Lulu shook her head helplessly. "Xiaofei, if you're used to seeing amazing divine objects, would you be interested in seeing ordinary divine objects of the first or second rank?" Xiaofei shook her head. "That's true, but these boys don't seem to be first or second grade divine items. Although the geniuses hidden by the big families are not bad, compared to them, the gap isn't that huge." Lulu's expression became serious this time. "No, the gap is really big. The excellence of those people is far from what these people can compare with. These people don't even have the qualifications to look up." At this moment, Lulu thought of Jiahua Weiyue. She thought of her cousin from the same family, Crown Prince Wang Qingyun. She also thought of her brother, Lu Feng. Unfortunately, Xiaofei smiled helplessly when she heard this. "Lulu, you're not going to talk about your cousin again, are you? I really don't know what's so good about your cousin. You're exaggerating. He's the #1 person in the world. I don't believe there's such a person in this world. The cousin you're talking about probably only exists in myths and legends. In the half year since they'd arrived at the headquarters, they'd interacted with each other day and night. Their relationship was comparable to that of real sisters. Therefore, there were some things that they didn't hide from each other. As for Lulu's so-called cousin, they'd heard about it countless times. Unfortunately, no matter how much they asked, Lulu refused to tell them her cousin's identity. Sometimes, they even suspected that this cousin was just an excuse for Lulu, a fictional character she made up to shut these people's mouths. After all, Lulu's cousin was so outstanding that he shouldn't exist in the human world. Lulu pursed her lips. "My cousin is 1,000,000 times more outstanding than I said. If you've seen him, you'll definitely think so too. Speaking of him, I really don't know when I'll be able to see him again. Even the old man said it out loud. But at this moment, Lulu's eyes flashed with a look of hatred. My cousin said he'd come back to see me as soon as possible, but it's been half a year. There's not even a trace of him. I wonder if he's forgotten about me. What a bad brother, the worst brother. Lulu spat viciously. Xiaofei, who was beside her, could only look at Lulu speechlessly. However, just as Lulu was about to say the most hateful words, a voice suddenly sounded in their ears. I know, so this is how you talk about me when I'm not around. It seems my appearance was a mistake. Ah, I'd better go home. The voice clearly reached Lulu's ears. Lulu's body froze when she heard it. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Finally, she slowly turned around and looked at the figure standing 2 meters behind her. She actually did something that made the eyes of the surrounding boys pop out of their sockets. In the eyes of countless people, Lulu was a goddess-like figure. Compared to the so-called 10 goddesses, she was much, much, much stronger. No, they couldn't be compared at all. Therefore, when they saw Lulu, many people fell in love at first sight and used all kinds of methods to win her heart. Unfortunately, none of them succeeded. As for the other methods, they were also unable to be realized. They used their family's resources, but they still couldn't find out Lulu's identity. This situation made them realize that Lulu's identity wasn't simple. It's very likely that she's the legitimate daughter of a first-rate family. Her mysterious background, extraordinary temperament, and beautiful appearance made Lulu quickly become the target of countless people's pursuit. Originally, Lulu was very polite to all boys and would never overstep her boundaries. But today, they understood that Lulu wasn't born this way. Her alienation also depended on who she was facing. After running a step, Lulu directly threw herself at Lu Feng. At this time, she was still 2 meters away from Lu Feng. With her body, there was no way she could fall into Lu Feng's arms. Seeing this, Lu Feng only smiled dotingly. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Lulu. At this time, Lulu accurately fell into Lu Feng's arms. Didn't you say you'd come to see me often? Why are you only here now? As if remembering something, Lulu stood up from Lu Feng's arms. At this moment, she was filled with anger. Lu Feng helplessly smiled bitterly. Lulu, you should know that I have too many things to do. That place is very dangerous. The slightest carelessness will cause you to fall into the abyss. As soon as I came back, I came to see you. Lu Feng's words were somewhat against his will. It has been 2 months since he came back. The first thing Lu Feng did when he came back was Yuyo Qingran. As for the rest, he had completely forgotten about it. Until Yuyo Qingran was safe, Lu Feng thought of other things. Of course, this didn't mean that Lulu wasn't important to Lu Feng. It was because Lu Feng knew that Lulu wouldn't be in danger. Compared to Yuyo Qingran, simply seeing Lulu wasn't the most important thing. Although what Lu Feng said was a lie, at this moment, there was no flaw in it. At least, Lulu believed it. Her smiling face was the best proof. In that case, I'll forgive you for the time being. In the future, remember to come and see me at all times, okay? After saying this, she fiercely looked at Lu Feng. Lu Feng didn't answer. He just lovingly smiled again. He reached out and gently scratched Lulu's hair until Lulu was slightly dissatisfied. He finally stopped. This time I won't leave. I'll accompany you for a while. I'll also study here for a while and become your senior brother. For Lulu, this is definitely a surprise, a shocking joy. She looked at Lu Feng with some disbelief. Until Lu Feng fiercely nodded, she finally jumped up in joy. Looking at Lulu's excited expression, Lu Feng's eyes became more doting. I thought our goddess Lulu wouldn't be moved by anyone. Tell me, who is this handsome guy? Which family's disciple? Xiaofei looked at Lu Feng, her eyes slightly shining. Girls can become goddesses because of their excellence. Naturally, boys can also become goddesses. In the headquarters, in addition to the 10 goddesses, there are also 10 male gods. Of course, compared to the 10 goddesses, these 10 male gods are real male gods. Each and every one of them had noble status, outstanding talent, and a terrifying family background. After all, boys like to show off, and there are often conflicts between them, so it's easy for others to know of their existence. However, in Xiaofei's eyes, Lu Feng's existence is not inferior to the 10 male gods in any way. In fact, he's much more outstanding. It's not that she knows Lu Feng's identity, it's all just a feeling. Lu Feng's appearance is enough to make him an existence like a male god. Moreover, she feels the kind of temperament on Lu Feng's body that no one else has given her before. Although she doesn't know Lu Feng's identity, she doesn't know Lu Feng's talent, Xiaofei believes that Lu Feng is definitely a disciple of an aristocratic family. Because other than aristocratic families, there is no other power that can cultivate such a person with such an extraordinary temperament. Hearing Xiaofei's words, Lulu revealed a mischievous expression. This expression caused everyone around her, including Xiaofei, to be slightly stunned. She has known Lulu for so long, but she has never seen Lulu reveal such an expression. Xiaofei knows that the person in front of her must have an extremely deep relationship with Lulu. If not, then she would never reveal such an expression. Lulu took Lu Feng's hand and pulled him in front of Xiaofei. She said with a proud face, "Xiaofei, this is my cousin. How is it? Is he as outstanding as I said?" Chapter 554. Hearing this, Xiaofei was slightly surprised. She didn't expect that Lulu actually had a cousin. Although she didn't know if his existence was really as outstanding and terrifying as Lulu said, but just looking at his appearance and temperament, it was really similar to Lulu's description. Sizing up Lu Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After a long time, Xiaofei finally nodded and said, "Not bad. It's just that I don't know if his strength is as terrifying as you said it was." Lulu looked at Xiaofei somewhat unhappily. "My cousin is definitely powerful, no? It's terrifying. In the current world, he is the number one. No one can compare to him." After saying this, Lulu's face was still filled with a proud expression. Lulu had witnessed several terrifying battles of Lu Feng. The most glorious moment, the one that shocked Lulu the most, was when Lu Feng had transformed into a Buddha. At that time, Lu Feng faced hundreds of monstrous geniuses and monsters from various major races. Any one of them was much, much stronger than these students, and any one of them was much, much stronger than Lu Feng. But facing Lu Feng, they were almost completely annihilated. When Lulu recalled the scene of Lu Feng casually taking a step and the scene of a piece of land falling, her eyes were filled with spirit. Because even her cousin, Crown Prince of Heavenly Dao, Wang Qingyun, had never been so calm and easily killed countless geniuses. In Lulu's heart, everything Lu Feng did at that time was turned into ashes with a snap of a finger. This was the best way to describe it. Therefore, in Lulu's heart, Lu Feng's number one was unparalleled at that time, the only ruler of the universe. However, her guess was more or less correct. After the battle with the Master of the Six Paths, Lu Feng defeated the Immortal Kings and Demon Kings and returned to the throne of the War of the Kings. It could be said that Lu Feng was recognized by the entire world as the supreme existence closest to the Emperor's Dao domain. Moreover, with the power from that battle and the title of Master of the Six Dao, Lu Feng was recognized as the number one monarch battle throughout history. Unfortunately, Lulu didn't know about these things, and even if she did know, she wouldn't want to tell these people. She knew that if she said it out loud, these people would not believe her. Of course, Lulu did not want to say it out loud, because in her opinion, all of these belonged to her. Xiaofei looked at Lulu helplessly. She knew Lulu's character. Every time she talked about her cousin, she would be in high spirits. And this time, seeing the real person, it was even more so. In Lulu's ears, she simply couldn't bear to hear others speak ill of her cousin. Lu Feng smiled and looked at Xiaofei. "You're Lulu's classmate, right? Thank you for taking care of her for the past 6 months." Lu Feng knew Lulu's character. She had suffered so much in the past, and her heart was incomparably fragile. For her safety, Lu Feng allowed her to come to the Lu family by herself. Although she eventually came to the Federal University, all of this reflected Lulu's loneliness. After more than half a year, Lulu was no longer the Lulu of the past. The fact that she could say such witty words undoubtedly proved that the current Lulu had become incomparably cheerful. She had completely released her nature from the depths of her heart. Lu Feng was happy for Lulu from the bottom of his heart. He knew that all of this was the influence of the surrounding environment. If it weren't for her classmates taking good care of her, Lulu definitely wouldn't have become like this. Therefore, Lu Feng was grateful to these people from the bottom of his heart. Hearing this, Xiao Fei, who had always been carefree, actually showed a rare blush on her face. "Cousin, I can call you that, right?" Lu Feng smiled and nodded. "You're Lulu's classmate, a good friend. You can call me whatever you want." Xiao Fei smiled shyly. Actually, Lulu's personality has always been like this, but maybe she didn't want to let go in the past. The fact that she became like this today has nothing to do with us. It's all because of Lulu's own acceptance. So, you don't have to say any words of thanks. Of course, if you want to thank us, then treat us to a good meal. That should be fine, right? Lu Feng chuckled. "Of course. You guys decide the time. I'll be studying at the Federal University for a while, so I have plenty of time." Hearing that Lu Feng was also a student at the Federal University, Xiao Fei showed a strange expression. She naturally knew how difficult it was to get into the Federal University. Of course, according to Lulu, with Lu Feng's aptitude, it was not a problem for him to get into the Federal University. However, if he wanted to get in during the abnormal enrollment period, it undoubtedly showed that Lu Feng's background was strong, or that he was really outstanding. All these thoughts were completed in a very short period of time. Xiao Fei's face was full of smiles. She then asked, "Cousin Lulu, what class are you in? If this is the case, we can come and play with you when we're free." Lu Feng nodded slightly. "I should be in the special class of the sophomore psyche faculty, but I just came and haven't had a day of classes yet. If you want to find me, you're welcome at any time." Xiao Fei really smiled when she heard Lu Feng's words. She looked at Lulu very proudly and smiled very proudly. Suddenly, Lu Feng seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Lulu beside him and said, "Lulu, you don't have a car yet, right?" Lu Feng knew Lulu's personality. After coming to the Federal University, Lulu would definitely not ask for anything from the Lu family. Even if these things were nothing to the Lu family, Lulu would not ask for them. After all, Lulu didn't like the Lu family very much. It was because of the Lu family's resolute attitude that caused her childhood to be dark. Lulu nodded slightly and looked at Lu Feng in confusion. Lu Feng smiled gently. "When I bought a car this afternoon, I also bought one for you. When you have time, you can drive it from my dorm." Lulu's eyes flashed with surprise when she heard this. She suddenly jumped up and kissed Lu Feng fiercely. Lulu was a psyche master. A psyche master was different from a warrior. Their bodies were very strong, so a short distance was nothing for a warrior. However, it was different for a psyche master. Before they became a psyche master, their bodies were basically no different from a normal person's. Of course, what made Lulu happy was not that she had a car, but that this car was a gift from Lu Feng. This represented a kind of care, and what Lulu needed was this kind of care. Hearing this, Lulu didn't say anything, but Xiao Fei couldn't help but ask, "Cousin Lulu, what kind of car did you buy for Lulu? You have to know that ordinary cars are not good enough for our Princess Lulu." Lulu glared at Xiao Fei. In her opinion, even if it was 10,000 Federation dollars, she would like it. As long as it was a gift from Lu Feng, she would like it. Lu Feng smiled slowly and said, "Of course it can't be too ordinary. Otherwise, how could it be worthy of the title of Goddess Lulu?" When she heard Lu Feng say the word goddess, Lulu showed a rare blush. She knew that Lu Feng had heard her conversation with Xiao Fei. "Then what did you buy?" After saying this, Xiao Fei looked at Lu Feng with a money-grubber expression. In her mind, the suspension car that Lu Feng was gifting her would cost at least $1 million. In fact, it might even be worth tens of millions of dollars. Lu Feng said, "It's a car from the Crystal series." "Crystal series?" Lulu was slightly confused. She didn't know much about the car series because she usually didn't pay much attention to these things. However, just because she didn't know about it didn't mean that others didn't know about it. At least Xiaofei, who was next to her, had done some research on these things. His eyes widened as he stared at Lu Feng in shock. The crystal series? Is it the most luxurious crystal series among the hover cars designed for girls? Lu Feng smiled and nodded. Xiaofei took a deep breath when she saw Lu Feng admit it. The cheapest car in the crystal series costs more than 10 million Federation coins. Lulu, your cousin is so good to you. I also want to have a cousin like him. Seeing Xiaofei's envious expression, Lulu's face showed a hint of pride. She knew that with Lu Feng's status, 10 million Federation coins was really nothing. After all, this was only equivalent to a few thousand god item points. Back in the Outland battlefield, she could easily get hundreds of millions of god item points. If that amount was converted to Federation coins, it would be trillions. Therefore, this little thing was really nothing. However, although it wasn't very expensive, it represented Lulu's sincerity. Therefore, Lulu was really proud at this moment. Then, is it the Z1 model or the Y1 model? The two models Xiaofei mentioned were the more common models in the Crystal series, but they were also more than 10 million. In her opinion, Lu Feng should have bought these two models for Xiaofei. I bought it called the Crystal Heart. I think it's the most suitable for Lulu. When Xiaofei heard Lu Feng mention the Crystal Heart, she sucked in a breath of cold air. Crystal Heart? Really? The Crystal Heart? The Crystal Heart, the most expensive, luxurious, and top-notch crystal series. Lu Feng nodded slightly. At this moment, Xiaofei let out a shriek. Lulu, I want to be your cousin. I want to be your sister-in-law. Hearing this, Lu Feng was stunned. Lulu, on the other hand, had a helpless expression. She pushed Xiaofei with all her might, and finally managed to shake Xiaofei awake from her madness. You don't have a chance. I already have a sister-in-law. Hearing this, Xiaofei's face turned pale with disappointment. However, she looked at Lu Feng with incomparable excitement. Cousin Lu Feng, you're actually so rich. That's the Crystal Heart. I heard it costs more than 500 million Federation coins. Heavens, more than 500 million Federal coins. What a terrifying astronomical figure. You actually gave it to me just like that. No, you have to give me one too. Even if it's the worst one, even if it's a million yuan one, it's fine too. Is that okay? Is that okay, Cousin Lulu? As she spoke, Xiaofei walked to Lu Feng's side and shook Lu Feng's other arm. Seeing this, Lulu looked at Xiaofei with a slightly angry expression. Hey, Lu Fei, this is my cousin. He's not yours. Go play somewhere else. Don't come over and embarrass me. After saying this, Lulu looked at Xiaofei with disdain. Unfortunately, after being stimulated by the Crystal Heart, Lu Fei's eyes were glowing. She didn't care about anything else. She kept shaking Lu Feng's arm and looked at Lu Feng pleadingly. Lu Feng smiled helplessly. Okay, no problem. Just let me know when you've taken a liking to it. I'll pay for you then. Hearing this, Lu Fei shouted excitedly. She actually danced and danced in front of the crowd. That's great. Cousin Lulu, why don't I just give myself to you? That way, I won't owe you any favors. Lu Feng could only smile helplessly. Lu Feng didn't say anything, but Lulu was really dissatisfied. In the next moment, the two of them started to quarrel. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.